They've had Chinese-made vaccines which are not of a fantastically high quality, so they're much more worried about the elderly. It isn't as straightforward as simply saying, well, you know what, tomorrow morning, fair enough, change the policy and people can just run around and do what they want. I think in the short term, they would probably have to come up with some policy in which many older people are made to stay at home. The problem is that there's no easy way out because the wide vaccine-driven immunity or resistance that we have in the West simply doesn't exist in China.
It's a growing conundrum for the leadership in Beijing, and the public demonstrations seem to have been boosted by televised images from the World Cup, showing fans gathering without masks or mitigation, close-ups that Chinese state television is now pulling from its transmissions. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
To recap our top stories, NATO member states have agreed to provide more weapons to Ukraine this winter as Russia's invasion of the nation continues. Russia says it had no other choice but to cancel nuclear talks with the US this week because neither side could agree on what exactly to discuss. The world's largest active volcano in Hawaii has continued to erupt. The National Guard says no need to panic just yet, and Twitter has stopped enforcing policies aimed at preventing the spread of COVID-19 misinformation. That's the latest feature story news. Chris Jones reporting.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. It's really not creepy that little kids mindlessly whole world. All the other countries suck, and if this country ever goes to war, as it often wants to do, I promise to help go and kill all the other countries' kids. God bless GE. God bless Citigroup. Amen.
Very good, kids. Now come and get your Ritalin.
Free Talk Live. Welcome to Free Talk Live. The phones are open. You can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here in the studio tonight, it's Ian.
And Aria.
And you can join us online anytime you want. Just head over to freetalklive.com. Enjoy the features that we have for you there. Once again, that is freetalklive.com. One of the things we've been covering over the last roughly month now at this point has been the Elon Musk takeover of Twitter. Why is that? Well, because Elon Musk is entertaining as hell. I mean, I think we were saying the other day that like he's Trump level entertaining. You know, like he's up there.
I don't know if I would put him on Trump's level as entertainment. He's certainly as despicable of a human being as Donald Trump, but Trump entertains me more with his shenanigans. Like Trump, I feel like knows what he is, where Musk thinks he's genuinely trying to make the world a better place, and I don't think Trump believes that.
Could be. I mean, I feel like
Trump's trying to make the world a better place for Trump. And
Musk, may be. That's an interesting assessment there. I think Musk certainly knows what he is in that he is a troll. He knows how to troll. Like, he knows how to get reactions from the people who hate him.
He does. But my sense
and so does Trump.
Yes. Yeah. They're both very good at that. And that's the mark of a good troll, right? Mm-hmm. That's what we trolls do, is we get reactions from other people, and that tells us whether or not we were successful at whatever we were trying to do.
Right.
However, I feel like Musk's biggest downfall at the moment isn't necessarily being entertaining or not entertaining. It's that I think he's bitten off more than he can chew with Twitter.
Really?
Yeah, and I think the reality of trying to run a company of this scope and this magnitude is setting in on him, and I think he's unqualified for it.
Why? I mean, he's come in there, he's cleaned house, he's wiped out at least more than half at this point. It was half initially, and then hundreds more apparently resigned when he gave them the ultimatum a couple of weeks ago. Said basically, you're either going to come to work or you're going to resign. And people just they didn't want to come to work, so they're gone now. So we're probably at like a third or 40% or something like that of the previous 7,500 employees.
But I mean the U.S. government's not dying tonight either, and I wouldn't say that they're doing a very good job of managing their own affairs. That's sort of
But
how
I mean-
I see Twitter, except Twitter's not a state.
How can he do worse than what Twitter was doing? I mean,
I don't think he can. Well, I'm not sure
for
if he
all
can
the
do worse.
negativity, right? For all the negativity directed towards Elon Musk over purchasing Twitter, most of it's coming from the left because now they don't have their, essentially an echo chamber anymore. They're mad because Musk is letting right-wing people back onto Twitter. And that's ultimately where the frustration and all these anti-Twitter articles are coming from. They're on the attack against him.
See, this is just silliness on their part. That there's a really simple solution here. When you see one of these people and you don't like what they have to say because you think it's bigoted or you think it's evil or racist or whatever, you click these little dots next to their name,
right,
and then you click block, and then they go away forever.
Yeah.
You never have to see them again.
It's that simple.
It's the miraculous technology that we have at our fingertips.
That doesn't stop them from being butthurt about the fact that those people, again, are platformed. So even though they themselves could block their accounts, they are just mad
That's
that there's
obsession.
other people who can see them.
That's
right?
obsession levels of psychotic, though, isn't it? I mean,
well, yeah.
If I don't see them, I don't hear them. And there's no way for me to see or hear them. And it pisses me off that they continue to have the ability to speak, even though I'm not exposed to what they're saying. That means
That's what we're
I'm
talking
obsessed
about.
with them.
Yes.
They're living in my head rent-free, and I need to learn how to live a productive life that isn't based around hatred.
So, I mean, there's been a lot of negativity around Elon Musk's takeover, and the press has taken every opportunity to report on anything that they consider to be negative. But again, the company was losing $4 million a day prior to Musk's takeover. If he slashed half of the staff or more at this point, that's gonna cut the spend down somewhat. Now, also they have lost some advertisers apparently, including Apple, and we're going to get into Apple here in a moment. But
there's plenty of advertisers. I mean, there will always be someone who wants to advertise with a right-wing company. And Twitter, I don't think is right-wing, and Musk isn't right-wing, but that's the perception that's being created. And there will always be people like the MyPillow guy who will advertise with people like that. And Chick-fil-A would certainly love it.
That's true.
I think, to be succinct about it, I liken the entire thing to a new U.S. president coming in. Like, okay, Biden screwed up the country, but that's okay. We're going to vote in this new guy, DeSantis. And I know that it's still going to continue collapsing under DeSantis, just like it's doing under Biden and just like it did under Trump. To me, that's Musk being in control of Twitter now. It's going to continue collapsing.
You think so?
Probably in new and different ways.
If you believe Musk, the numbers are up. The number of signups are up. The amount of usage of the system is up.
But if I had reason to believe that the Hindenburg, as I was watching it go up, was going to, explode and there was going to be this catastrophic accident, I would also be, filming it, and I would be there. I would not just leave the place to go do something else. That's sort of what Twitter is. It's the Hindenburg. It's taking off, and I'm here to watch the explosion.
Okay, but you're still on Twitter.
Yes,
right?
I'm here to watch the explosion.
When you say it's going to explode, what do you?
I don't think it's going to explode.
Envision?
I mean, that's obviously just where the metaphor begins to break down, but. Most recently, I was thinking about the fact that Musk went in and he turned off all of the extraneous Twitter services. And I can't remember any of them by name, but it was related to two-factor authentication and just every other service that wasn't directly related to tweeting something and it being in someone's feed.
Okay.
And I understand the reason for this, and this is what caused me to think about it. This is sort of what you would want to do if you went into a company and there was networking equipment everywhere and IP address conflicts.
Core business,
yes, you turn everything off and you turn things back on as you find out that you need them.
Right, that makes sense.
And Twitter had all sorts of things that they did not need.
Mm-hmm. The site's not broken. It's working fine.
It was briefly, and it's breaking in various ways for different people. It's not all the time, but two-factor authentication, if you received an SMS code upon trying to log in, that was broken for people briefly because that was one of the machines he turned off.
Okay.
And I understand it. That was a really good way, a definitive way of finding out everything that isn't needed. If 2 weeks passes and you haven't turned on that machine, then you don't need that machine, and you're going to save some money and some development costs and all of that. But I would do that with a certain level of client. My $45 billion client, I don't think that's necessarily the way to go with managing a company of this
that's
scale.
Another difference between Trump and Elon Musk is $45 billion. It's a lot, but it's not going to sink him. And Trump, he's like a millionaire, right? Like I don't think he's a billionaire guy. as much as he might want to be. I don't think he's gotten there because he's not as good at business. He's not as good at business. Like they say about Trump that he basically inherited a lot of his business and his money from his dad, and that was the guy who was good at doing business. And Trump, he's good at just getting attention for Trump. Now, Musk is good at doing attention, and the guy can run a business. Whether or not we agree with him going after subsidies from the state, I think that's the biggest critique of Musk's business, approach.
I don't know. I'm not entirely sure he can run a business. And, this is all hearsay, but I read things written by former Tesla employees and other companies, SpaceX, who... The reason that SpaceX is successful, they say, is because it was already successful and Elon Musk just hasn't made any notable changes to it.
Did he buy that company? I didn't know that. Oh, okay. Interesting.
And you have something similar going on with Tesla, except you have the upper management who just know how to handle and deal. They're like handlers for Elon Musk. And according to this one employee, almost everything that the upper management people did was just they were employed basically to handle Elon Musk and to keep his tantrums at bay and to keep his crazy whimsical decisions from, sinking the company overnight when he goes, you know what? Let's sink $30 billion into this.
Okay.
That's the allegation. I don't know if it's true or not. Well, like I said, it's just hearsay. But
whenever you're dealing with an ex-employee, you might have some sour grapes on your hands. Yeah. Right? There's always that possibility.
But I do know someone who works for Tesla, and they refuse. They do everything they can to get out of any meeting where Musk is going to be there. Because there are occasions where he'll point at you and he'll ask you a question. If he doesn't like your answer, he'll fire you on the spot. And that doesn't reek of being a good business person to me.
The number here is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Well,
he's got more money than I do, so what do I know?
Regardless of what you think about how he runs his business, he's running it how he wants to, and I have an appreciation for that. He's now calling out Apple, and we'll get into the Twitter versus Apple situation coming up. Free Talk Live.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Try Agorist Hosting, the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, custom apps for your Shopify store, IPFS integration, and more. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. To get started, head over to agoristhosting.com.
Gold and silver. You can own the most stable assets in recorded history with BullionMax.com. Buy direct from BullionMax.com without talking to a salesperson, and your precious metals shipped fully insured directly to your home. Free Talk Live can get you their silver starter kit at employee pricing. Just go to BullionMax.com/FTL. It includes 5 ounces of the most desirable silver products plus a free gold bag. This offer is limited to 1 per household, so get yours now. Go to BullionMax.com/FTL.
You can't win if you don't enter, and you actually can improve your chances of winning a prize drawing if you wrinkle up your entry blank. I'm Holland Cook from survivalspeech.com, and I speak from experience. Why this works: if they'll be spinning the drum before drawing, your entry blank will move around more than, and not adhere to, other perfectly flat entry blanks. And if they don't spin the drum and merely reach into a box full of other perfectly flat entry blanks, many of which are sticking together, yours will feel different to the person reaching in. When you win, act surprised. And if you're looking for work, this is a metaphor. For more tips on sticking out in a world where just too much blends into the blah, 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 hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. You can join the show. You can bring up whatever you want. And the number here is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And by the way, I want to say thanks to Bitcoin.com, longtime sponsor here on Free Talk Live. If you're interested in learning about cryptocurrency like Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, head over to Bitcoin.com, click Get Started at the top of the page, and they will help you with some handy introductory videos that will keep you in the loop with what you need to know about the world of cryptocurrency. The basics like decentralization and permissionless money and being able to send value basically instantaneously to anybody anywhere in the world. You really ought to learn the basics before you decide to do something like buy some Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash. And you can do that by clicking Get Started at the top of the page over at Bitcoin.com. If you are not brand new to cryptocurrency, you can get their latest headlines over at news.bitcoin.com. They do a great job of covering the industry there. That's news.bitcoin.com. We're talking about Elon Musk versus Apple. He's picking a big fight.
Real quick, I'd like to point out Conan isn't here because he quit after last week's episode.
He's temporarily.
He's busy.
He's not quit.
I know, that's what okay, I phrased that badly.
Yeah.
He's not here because
he's working at a different thing, and it takes.
I was
up a lot
trying
of
to
his
say
time.
that he had not quit. He was just doing the thing he
he's
does
busy.
every winter. That's what I was attempting to say, and
He
it didn't
worked
come
for the
out
post
correctly.
office.
But,
He
you know,
said
after
that.
last week and his frustration, people may be sitting out there thinking, Conan just decided he wasn't coming back. No, it's nothing like that.
No, we're very professional with Conan. When he loses it on the air, we still love him.
Oh yeah,
And,
it was fantastic.
It's all good. Yeah, that was really entertaining. So yeah, we'll get Conan back, I'm sure, after the holiday season wraps up. But so we were talking about Elon Musk, and he's now going up against one of the biggest tech behemoths out there, Apple Computer. Elon Musk has thrown down the gauntlet against Apple. And I don't know if you saw what happened, Aria, the other day. I think it was yesterday.
Something like Apple refused to advertise on Twitter, and I think they wanted Twitter to make changes in order to get onto the Apple Store, which ended up leading to Elon Musk retweeting Library, who had experienced something different or a similar. But Library, it turned out, ended up bowing to to Apple's demands, if I recall correctly. And Elon Musk is essentially saying that he won't bow to these demands.
Yeah, so he said...
And Elon Musk is a fool for doing this. Parler, or maybe it was Gab, I don't remember which one, it was the fastest growing social media site in the world. It came out of nowhere, and it was the #1 downloaded app on the Apple Store and the Google Store, and then suddenly it was gone. Almost overnight, big tech colluded together to just destroy this platform. And it still exists. Don't get me wrong.
Kanye West bought it.
Yeah. Well, go him. So it still exists, but it could have been so much bigger, so much more powerful than it is.
But the thing is, I mean, why would you want to compromise for these people?
Yeah, I wouldn't. I just, it's a bad business decision, I think, for him.
Well, I mean, look, I get why. We'll answer the question as to why, right? The reason why LBRY, which at the time I believed owned Odysee, they've now since split off. We talk a lot about both LBRY and Odysee over the years here on the show. LBRY is a decentralized file sharing protocol, basically, and it is a media sharing protocol, and it's really brilliant and awesome, and we're big fans of it here. We post our videos on LBRY, and Odysee is a platform that has behind the scenes, it has a LBRY protocol. Odysee also has a centralized distribution network as well, so it sort of mixes both of those worlds into the same app. But anyway, Odysee had an iPhone app, and Apple came to them and said, "Hey, look, you want to stay on our platform," which of course is a very popular platform, right? You want to stay on our platform, you are going to have to start censoring things. And so LBRY said, "Well, we do want to stay on your platform," so they did go ahead and censor the things that they asked them to censor. And it was LBRY's post about that Elon Musk had shared yesterday, where LBRY explained that during COVID, Apple demanded that our apps filter some search terms from being returned. If we did not filter the terms, our apps would not be allowed in the store. Apple may make good products, but they have been opposed to free speech for some time.
That's so appalling. And I mean, I get it.
Why are you appalled by that?
If Apple is so hell-bent on not allowing these search terms, then the way to do that would be to counter that information instead of attempting to forbid people from getting it. And I get it. It's Apple's platform. It's their company. They can do that if they want. But I think it's a disgusting attitude for them to have.
It is. And that's why Elon Musk is right to call them out for it.
Absolutely.
Publicize this. And so he publicized LBRY, and then he actually asked them further in the thread. So he shared LBRY. LBRY then responded to him or whatever, and he said, "What terms?" He said, "Apple disallowed," this is LBRY saying this, "Apple disallowed almost anything related to COVID, especially vaccines or human origins of the virus. We had to build a list of over 20 terms to not show results for only on Apple devices." So you could go on Odysee and search for these things on your computer.
That would be why we never experienced this.
Right. Or you could do it, in theory, on Android as well if they had the app out at that time. I'm not sure. There was some time where they didn't have an Android app at all because they were waiting for Google to approve it or something like that. But you could still use their website, and those restrictions weren't present. But Apple's app was essentially crippled for LBRY. And they did it because they didn't want to not be there, right? And the same thing's true of Telegram. If you remember hearing about Telegram, they had to admit at one point that Apple had done the same thing to them, where they said, "Yeah, we'll let you on the platform, but you have to forbid people from being able to access certain types of rooms," whatever those might have been, certain political rooms or file sharing rooms or whatever they were. So companies are doing this all the time. It's just you don't get to hear about it very often because, well, it's embarrassing. You know?
It is. And, I think I said it was detestable, or I don't remember what exact word I used. However, this way it's not as bad as I initially thought when I heard this. I would have assumed that Odysee had to make these changes just in general across their entire platform, knowing that it was just the Apple version. That's still bad.
It's bad.
And it's still detestable. But it means that every other version of Odysee is superior to the one people can find on Apple.
Correct.
And I hope that in the long run, knowing that their content is being censored will cause people to flee Apple and its platform and migrate to ones that are more open and more tolerant.
Yeah, I mean, I was telling Bonnie the other night that, one of the reasons why I will never use an Apple product like this is because they have total central control over the applications that you can install. Whether you like it or not, with Google products, they're not perfect. I'm not a Google fanboy or anything like that, but at the very least, the Android system has the ability to install non-Google approved stuff.
They do. You can download them directly from your browser. It takes a few button clicks.
Right. You don't have to go through the Play Store, which on Apple you have to go through their App Store in order to get anything. There's no other way to do it unless you quote-unquote jailbreak the iPhone, and I don't know what that entails, and it's certainly not something the average person can do, and what that opens up, I'm not sure. But with Google, you don't have to break quote-unquote anything. You just have to turn a security feature off, and then it will let you install something from somewhere else. Now, that's risky, right? Like, the downside of that is if you're an idiot and you install something from somewhere that you don't know where it's coming from, you may be installing some sort of malware or some kind of virus or whatever. But if you're not a fool, then it's usually a pretty good way to get some interesting things, like NewPipe, which plays YouTube videos without ads, for instance.
Free Talk Live.
And that's what it really comes down to. I think the internet is becoming more and more conservative. I've been online for 20 years.
Really?
And everyone's trying to make money now. And when you get money involved, you start having people scared of their own shadows or their own nipples.
A long time ago, WhiteHouse.com
porn site
was a porn site. There was a website that misspelled Blue's Clues somehow and was a porn site. And yeah, you don't really see those nowadays.
But I don't know. I mean, back in the 20 years ago, you didn't have 2 girls, 1 cup.
You didn't, but if you did, there wasn't that much complaint about it, because usually people that were online 20 years ago, you had to have a certain amount of technical sophistication.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Chris Jones. NATO member states have agreed to provide more weapons to Ukraine this winter as Russia's invasion of the nation continues. Talks are currently being held in Bucharest, with topics including China's growing military power and NATO membership on the table. Russia says it had no other choice but to cancel talks with the United States in Cairo planned for this week, after neither side could agree on what exactly to discuss. The talks were supposed to revolve around the START agreement, which allows both Russia and the US to inspect each other's nuclear arsenal. Moscow's Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov said the US was only interested in how to resume in-person nuclear weapons inspections, while Russia wanted to prioritise other issues. Stuart Smith reports from Moscow.
It was a last-minute decision. 6 days of talks had been planned in Egypt to discuss the most important nuclear weapons treaty between the US and Russia, which limits the number of deployed nuclear warheads and provides guarantees each country can inspect each other's weapons systems. Moscow said publicly it was open to discussing anything and everything at this meeting, but the US was the first to report earlier in the week that the meeting would have to be postponed after Russia pulled out. Washington's top diplomat in Moscow told Russian media that the US had no greater duty than to prevent the risk of nuclear escalation and nuclear war, and that was the purpose of the New START treaty, but it's due to expire in 2026 and progress has yet to be made on what will come next.
The world's largest active volcano, Mauna Loa, began erupting on Sunday for the first time since 1984. The National Guard remains on standby, but authorities said there's no need to panic just yet, as Jody Jacobs reports.
For now, the U.S. Geological Service says the lava remains contained within the summit and does not threaten Hawaiians living downslope, but warned residents on Monday that volcanic gases and fine ash may drift their way. Mauna Loa is the world's largest active volcano. Hawaii's Emergency Management Agency says it's opened 2 shelters on the island as a precaution, but also emphasized that there is no sign that the lava will threaten populated areas.
And Twitter has stopped enforcing policies aimed at preventing the spread of COVID-19 misinformation. Ira Spitzer has the latest from San Francisco.
Twitter announced the change by adding a note to the top of the page describing its extensive COVID-19 misinformation policies, simply saying that it is no longer enforcing them. Since December of 2020, Twitter had been labeling and removing misinformation about COVID-19 vaccines and other false claims related to the virus. The change appears to be part of new owner Elon Musk's controversial plans to roll back the platform's content moderation policies. Ira Spitzer, San Francisco.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. Phones are open here. We're talking about Elon Musk versus Apple Computer. Big versus big. Elon Musk, of course, his Tesla Corporation is one of the largest on the planet, and Apple Computer's up there too, right? These are two big behemoths in the tech world. And Musk, of course, now owns Twitter, and he is on the attack against Apple Computer after apparently yesterday or recently, he revealed it yesterday, that apparently Apple Computer told him that he was not going to be allowed, the Twitter app would not be allowed on their platform unless he did something. Let's see here. He says, Apple has threatened to withhold Twitter from its App Store, but won't tell us why. And after that, he then reveals, did you know Apple puts a secret 30% tax on everything you buy through their App Store? And I think a lot of people don't know this. And this is also true about Google, by the way, if I recall correctly. I don't know if Google changed their rate to drop it below Apple, but at one time I believe they both were 30% fees. So anytime you buy something through the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store, most of the time, now there are some minor exceptions. Somebody else argued, oh, well, Apple only charges 15% for companies less than $1 million or something like that. But either way, it's a lot, right? Like that's a significant...
That is.
Yeah, that's way more than, a credit card processing fee times 2, right? Like that's a credit card process for 30%, that's a credit card processing fee times 10. So that's a huge chunk. It's roughly a third of all the money that people are paying through these app stores, whether it's for a monthly, if you sign up for an app that costs monthly, they're taking 30% of that. If you buy an app that's a one-time fee, if you make a payment through an app for something in the app, if it's going through Apple's App Store or Google's App Store, they are taking 30%.
That explains why this game I used to play, it existed both as an app and in a browser. But if you bought premium points through the browser, it was significantly cheaper than if you went through the App Store. And a lot of the players hadn't noticed that. I was one of them who had, and I never really thought too much about why. But
that's exactly
obviously
why.
Makes sense.
Yep. So Musk, to his credit, he's outing these people. Now, we still haven't heard what exactly it is that Apple wants from him, because they're going to have to tell him at some point, right? Like, well, if you don't do what we say, okay, what are you saying? We'll tell you eventually. They haven't told him yet.
Does he even want to be on the Apple Store? My perception of Apple is a bit jaded in that, to me, I think Apple devices are fashion statements, and that the most of the people using them are sort of hipster, progressive-y types. So I suspect they're not too inclined to use Elon Musk's Twitter anyway.
Well, that's a good question. Maybe he feels the same way, and that's why he's willing to throw this up against the wall and see if it sticks, see if he can kind of throw his weight around with them.
I bet the BlackBerry store would have him on.
I don't think they exist anymore.
I have no idea if they do or not.
I think BlackBerry went out of business some time ago. Maybe it's gotten picked up and reopened, kind of like Blockbuster. Somebody owns the brand now, but I think they went out of business. But here's a story from the Wall Street Journal.
That's because they didn't have Twitter on their App Store.
Could be. The Wall Street Journal's got a story here about Elon Musk going up against Apple. He says a cornerstone of the iPhone business empire has set the stage for a potentially bruising battle between the world's richest man and the world's most valuable company. Apple and its chief executive Tim Cook have the ability to hold great sway over Twitter's potential success, as the iPhone maker is a major advertiser and tightly controls the software on its App Store. In a string of tweets accusing Apple of staunching free speech and claiming the tech giant had threatened to kick Twitter off the iPhone, Musk introduced a new wrinkle in Apple's efforts to maintain control over software distribution, acting as a megaphone for critics who say the company holds too much power through its App Store. By calling attention to their role as a gatekeeper for the app ecosystem, Musk is picking up the mantle in the years-long fight that developers have waged against Apple and its fees. Musk could bring a new focus to the company from lawmakers and regulators around the world, including politicians who have expressed concern that Silicon Valley is silencing conservative voices. Now, that is not the way to solve this problem. And I have not seen Musk call for that, so that's just the Wall Street Journal speculating that because Musk is talking about this, that politicians would somehow intervene in this.
Knowing what I do of Musk, though, I don't think he would be opposed to it, whether or not he calls for it. I don't think he'd call for it because that's...
He doesn't seem to be a principled libertarian or anything like that. But, whether or not the politicians get involved here, I think that if they do get involved, I don't think that any sort of law is going to affect this situation because ultimately Apple is not a monopoly. They cannot be regulated as though they are a monopoly. They have competition, right? Google's a competitor in the phone field. I think there used to be a Windows Phone. I don't know if Microsoft stopped developing that. I think they might have. But,
that's a good question. Well, it was terrible, so I hope they did.
But there's nothing in theory stopping a third player, maybe Musk himself, from getting involved in the phone business, right, and creating their own.
Well, he can use Android.
System.
He doesn't have to create his own operating system. That's one of the few good things that Google has done. When they purchased Android, they didn't close the source like everyone suspected they would. Now, if you make a branching operating system, you have to do certain things if you want the Google Play Store to be installable on your device or to come pre-installed. But
well, he's mad at Google too. So if he does go this route, I'm guessing he would go and do his own thing and just say, screw the Google Play Store in that case.
Which is fine. There's plenty of, like APK Pure. There's a lot of warnings out there. Oh, you can't download from these third-party sites. But like, I've done it through all of my life. And as you pointed out earlier, as long as you're not an idiot, you're going to be fine.
So Musk, again, is bringing attention to this. Apple did not respond to requests for comment. Musk says he's losing $4 million a day and facing an advertiser revolt by big brands that I've heard Apple is included in one of the companies that has quit advertising with Twitter. And is worried, big brands worried about the social media's company's content moderation and uncertainty at the company due to executive departures. He's trying to bolster Twitter's subscription business, making it less reliant on advertising, which I think is a smart move.
Absolutely.
On his part. The new Twitter Blue, which is set to give users benefits such as identity verification for a monthly fee, has been delayed, with Musk tentatively promising it will roll out on Friday. Apple stands to collect as much as 30% of revenue from Twitter subscriptions that Mr. Musk has said are set to become a new focal point for the company. The company charges as much as 30% of app purchases or subscriptions placed through the App Store, but their cut of subscriptions falls to 15% after the first year of use. It's still a lot.
What is the selling point here, though? Because I'm not sure I understand it on the Twitter subscription. Well, he's asking people to voluntarily pay for something that they've gotten for free forever.
It's kind of weak. The main selling point is the blue check mark, right? There's a lot of people
But they're taking that away. Now you get the actual notable people who have blue check marks now, they're getting gray check marks or vice versa.
There's something about, from what I understand, and to be fair, I have not followed the ins and outs of this closely. Musk sort of like changes with the wind on this, right? Like he goes one direction and then he kind of goes back another way. But as I understand it, there's the blue check mark and then the gray check mark is for like organizations, right? Isn't there a separate check for?
I'm not sure.
Some sort of like an organization, and then you can be a member of that. Anyway, we're gonna find out. He probably doesn't even know yet on his own. But that's the pitch, right? You get the blue check mark, this coveted blue check mark.
It's not coveted anymore.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, anybody will be able to pay for it. But
you can already pay for it. You just have to pay for 2,000 followers somewhere on the internet instead of paying Twitter.
It's not that easy to get it. There's the old way, at least. There were a lot of hoops you had to jump through. Like if you were quote unquote notable or something, you had to have like news articles written about you and stuff like that. So there was a big procedure to kind of get one of these things, and a lot of people just couldn't get it, even though they did meet the requirements. That just Twitter wouldn't give it to them, right? Some leftist is in the office that handles that thing, and like, well, just don't want to give it to this right-wing person or whatever. So now you just pay $8 a month and you'll get it. What he could really do to make it valuable, I think, would be to make it so you saw no advertising on Twitter, but they're saying, oh, it'll be reduced advertising. Well, that's not that great.
Yeah, how reduced?
Yeah, right. What does that mean? 50%? That's still, I don't want to see any ads when I'm on Twitter. And there are already apps you can download that will knock out all of the ads on Twitter without you having to pay a dime. There are some apps that'll charge you for it, like once. More coming up here. This is Free Talk Live.
I've been told no in many different ways.
I give you an order and you're going to obey it.
George, you can go this way. You can't do that and you have to leave here.
You cannot bring Simon to the rally.
Walk with me.
Well, I'm comfortable here, actually. Whoa. Hey. Who do you think you are? Excuse me.
There is no video or audio allowed in this office.
No, I have work today.
You ain't going to make it.
Wait a minute.
Hey! Oh my God! Unbelievable! Why are you running from me?
Because you scared me.
What am I being detained for?
You're being served.
What is this?
You're being served.
What is this?
Bureaucrats have a funny way of telling people no.
That's the sound of the men working on the chain.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm. On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
Is Free Talk Live. You can join the show here and bring up whatever you want. The number is 603-283-6160. We've been talking about Elon Musk going up against another tech behemoth in the form of Apple Computer, calling them out publicly for their 30% fee that they charge on purchases through their App Store, meaning that anytime you buy something using Apple's App Store, which you're pretty much forced to, and any apps that install via the App Store, which is pretty much everything, 30% is going to Apple.
See, that's what I think is wrong. Like, and I know they got their legal shenanigans, they've got all of that lined up. But once you buy a device, if you're not leasing it from your mobile carrier, as a lot of people do, but once you paid it off, whatever, once you have that device, it should be yours for you to do whatever you want to it. And I feel like companies shouldn't be, I don't want to say they shouldn't be allowed, because who's going to stop them, but they shouldn't have the habit of trying to curtail that process and put roadblocks in your way to keep you from controlling your device. If it's your iPhone and you bought it for $1,400 or whatever from, the T-Mobile store, you should be able to put whatever software you want
I
on
agree,
it.
but Apple has always been like this. I mean, this
I know
goes
they're not
back
the only
to-
ones. I mean, it goes all the way back to like the NES and probably before that to VHS.
Well, no, I'm talking about Apple being in total control over their devices goes back as long as I can remember. The Macintosh computer, for instance, you can't just go and, I mean, nowadays they have something called the Hackintosh, but it's not easy to do this, right? Like, generally, you cannot just go to a computer store or Newegg or wherever and buy computer parts and create a Macintosh computer. You have to buy them pre-assembled from Apple, and when it goes bad, something breaks with a computer, you can't just open the thing up and repair it yourself. They have proprietary tools that are required. They essentially lock these things down. And unless you are a Apple certified repair person or whatever, which means you're paying them for the ability to repair their products, then you ain't getting into it. I mean, maybe if you took a sledgehammer to it or something like that. These things are difficult as hell. The last time I ever tried, and I doubt they've changed since I've seen them.
I doubt. I mean, there's a reason that I don't own any Apple devices.
Right.
I mean, and it's exactly that. If I buy hardware, I should be able to put whatever software on it that I want.
Agreed. Apple, of course, would argue, and it's their perspective, and it's a legitimate perspective in that, as you pointed out, it's their company and they can run it how they want to.
Yes, but once they sell you that device, it's your device.
Sure, but they also have the software running on the device, and that effectively locks it down to letting in anything they don't want to let in. And their argument would essentially be, I think, that, hey, Apple's for ease of use. We want, grandma to be able to get in here with her one-button mouse and be able to, have a word processor and her other things, and she doesn't need to be downloading questionable software. So we at Apple will vet all software available through the Apple Store, and we will make it so that everything is safe for grandma or whoever else it is that doesn't want to pay attention to the things that they're doing, that doesn't want to learn things, that just wants to have a safe, round off the corners computer experience. And they would say that opening up their system to anything would technically open their system up to all kinds of problems that could come from anything.
And I like that idea in theory, and certainly they can do that, and they should do that. There's plenty of market for that. However, jailbreaking your iPhone should be no more difficult than unlocking developer mode on Android. You go to unlock the ability to actually put whatever software you want on your phone. To get rid of the Apple controller, you should just have to go to settings, click a button 7 times, and say, yes, I understand the risks. Let's go.
Right.
It should be that simple. Instead, you've got to risk bricking your device, and if
they don't
Apple
want people like us on their system.
No, that's why we're not on their system. So, but still, I mean, imagine how many more customers they could have. Because I don't necessarily mind their operating system. The UI may be better. I'm used to Android, and anytime someone hands me their iPhone, I'm like, I don't know how to make this do what I want it to do.
I'm the same way.
Take this thing back. However, it may be superior. I'll never know.
I'll never find out. Yeah. Let's go to Major Payne. He's on the line in Michigan. Go ahead, Major.
Hey, guys. The first thing that pops into my head is this guy's last name, Musk.
Mm-hmm.
Now, most of you guys probably haven't considered that, but that's the scent gland on every mammal. And he seems to want to leave his stink on everything.
All right.
Well, and I don't deny him that, and he approaches life with the same mindset I think I got. I've been accused of not beating around the bush. And I say, well, you're right. I'll just jump right in the middle of that damn thing and stomp it down.
Okay.
That's what a gorilla does. Make a bed, right? But if he wants to sink his teeth into the tires of this garbage truck that is the internet and let some air out of it, I'm all good with that. I think it's high time.
Can you explain what you mean with that analogy?
That's an interesting.
Well, he just seems to me to be the biggest junkyard dog. And I have known some junkyard dogs that will attack trucks.
Mm-hmm.
They don't like the color of the truck or the uniform or whatever. I knew a German Shepherd that got flopped around 3 times one time.
No, I understand dogs, chasing and biting tires. What I don't understand is, what would Musk be doing that would be taking a bite out of the tire?
Well, he's going to try to consume 20% of the internet or so.
No, internet doesn't work like that. Elon Musk isn't going to eat the internet. that doesn't happen.
No, he's not going to eat the internet, but he's trying to consume bits and pieces.
What do you mean by that, though? When you say consume it, what do you mean?
Mark on the moon.
Huh?
He already has his mark on the moon. He's got the cars, and like I said, the man leaves his mark.
Okay, yeah, he may leave a mark in that, Twitter's got there's a lot of people on it and all that, and people are talking about it, but it's not
Charles
going to-
Manson also left a mark.
He's not going to deflate the internet. I guess that's what I'm saying. The internet is going to be fine with or without Elon Musk doing the things that he does.
No, but it doesn't hurt my feelings any that they might have to pull over and change a tire.
All right, thank you, Major, for the call tonight. I appreciate it. I think I think that particular analogy is lost on me.
I think Jack Dorsey has, been a bigger player. He's left his mark on the internet, much more so. Jack Dorsey, of course, is the CEO of Square and one of the founders, maybe the founder of Twitter. I think he's had a huge impact on the internet and the development of the internet. Just like, for better or worse, Mark Zuckerberg has had a profound impact on the growth of the internet.
Well, Jack Dorsey said he was sorry for what he did with Twitter. He was sorry he came out after he resigned as CEO. I don't think he started the company. I think he was approved as a CEO at some point, but he said he was sorry for what he did by centralizing Twitter. Like, he ultimately is interested in decentralization now,
right?
But he wasn't at the time.
I don't think he should be sorry, because I think the centralization of Twitter and the censorship that we've seen as a result of it, and just this chaos surrounding it in general, was good for society, so that we learned the importance of decentralization.
Yeah, but it would have happened anyway. I mean, you would still would have had Facebook. You still would have had these other centralized platforms. It would have been interesting had Twitter gone in some sort of a decentralized direction earlier on and seen what that built. Because, with the decentralized alternatives like Mastodon, there's no real large audience on Mastodons. I mean, there's some Mastodons that have a decent amount of people on them, but there's nothing like the size of Twitter, right? So,
oh Lord, no.
What would that have resulted in?
You would have to find a way to monetize it if you were doing that, because I don't know what the specs are on our server that's running it, but it couldn't handle 80 million users.
Twitter has not had any monetization of any of which to speak. They're losing money, and they've never made a single dime.
But they have that money to lose.
Well, they have investors' money.
Yeah.
Investors who apparently don't care about making money and only cared about having a leftist platform.
And that's the critical thing here, because that is the case. Someone was funding Twitter, and they didn't care that it continually lost money.
Mm-hmm.
Most
investors care about losing money.
Yes, this was almost certainly a government organization secretly funding Twitter. I don't know how else it could have been.
Or it could have been Soros types that just don't mind throwing money at activism.
Does even Soros and his types have that amount of money?
He's got a lot of money. I mean, I don't know how much, but he's a billionaire, I believe. So Twitter is going up against Apple, with Elon Musk calling out not just Apple. He also made a post today saying, talking about these gatekeepers. He says it's a real problem. Apple and Google effectively control access to most of the internet via their app stores. So with statements like that, it does make you wonder if Musk has something he wants to do about it, because he's that kind of guy and he can afford to do things like that. But in the Apple App Store review guidelines, one of the earliest warnings the company makes is that apps, quote, should not include content that is offensive, insensitive, upsetting, intended to disgust, in exceptionally poor taste, or just plain creepy. That's what Apple says.
That's a wide range of content.
Yeah, basically.
And it's way too subjective.
Yeah, and so now Apple is apparently telling Twitter that they're going to pull them from the App Store, but they have not yet said why that is. We'll tell you something else that Apple did to harm the protesters in China coming up. The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com.
I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better, too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, CVS, Walmart's Natural Beauty Aisle, but I can get it for you for 20% off with coupon code FTL20 at mymagicmud.com. FTL20 mymagicmud.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next, after the news, here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. The man charged with killing 10 people in a racially motivated attack at a supermarket in Buffalo, New York, has pleaded guilty. 19-year-old Peyton Gendron drove several hours to reach the store that he chose, as it was in a predominantly black area of New York State. FSN's U.S. correspondent Nick Harper reports.
The gunman pleaded guilty to 25 charges, including murder, domestic terrorism, and murder as a hate crime. On the day of the shooting, he drove 3 hours to Buffalo, a location he'd specifically chosen due to its large black community. Wearing body armor, he opened fire with a semi-automatic rifle outside and then inside the store, live streaming the attack. He now faces life in prison without the possibility of parole, as there is no death penalty in New York State. However, he's still facing separate federal hate crime charges, and if convicted of those, he could face the death penalty. I'm Nick Harper in Washington.
Media companies involved in the Wiki cable leaks from 12 years ago are calling on the U.S. government to drop charges against Julian Assange. He's currently in prison in the UK, awaiting extradition on charges under the Espionage Act. FSN's Caroline Malone reports from Washington.
The Guardian, New York Times, Le Monde, Der Spiegel and El País are pushing the US government to drop their prosecution of WikiLeaks co-founder Julian Assange. The companies collaborated with Wiki in 2010 to release thousands of cables on American diplomacy that had been leaked by US Army analyst Chelsea Manning. Julian Assange avoided arrest by staying in the UK Ecuadorian embassy for 7 years. In 2019, he was taken to a high-security jail and is appealing the extradition order to the US. The US Justice Department says he's caused serious damage to national security and put sources at harm. He faces 18 charges, including spying. But the media companies say publishing is not a crime and the charges against him undermine press freedom. Caroline Malone, Washington.
U.S. stocks tumbled Monday as investors reacted to protests seen in China over the week. And comments from several Federal Reserve members also sparked jitters on Wall Street. FSN's William Denzelo reports from New York.
Multinational companies with large production plants in China had a tough day of trading on Wall Street Monday, following this weekend's demonstrations over that country's strong zero-COVID policies. Apple plunged more than 2.5% during trading hours on a Bloomberg report that unrest in China could lead to around 6 million fewer iPhone Pros being made this year. The Dow closed the day down 1.5%, as did the S&P, while the Nasdaq slid 1.6%. Traders also reacted negatively to comments from St. Louis Fed President James Bullard, who said he supported more aggressive interest rate hikes to help curb inflation.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking today at the complexity of rooting for your team at the 2022 World Cup in Qatar if you happen to be an Iranian. The timing of the tournament, coming as it does in the middle of nationwide protests and upheaval in Iran, has created a dilemma for many Iranians who have travelled to Doha to see the games live and for those watching around the world on television. John Gazvinian is an Iranian-American author and historian whose most recent book charted the history of US relations with Iran.
Look, nationalism and patriotism is a complicated thing for Iranians. Iran obviously had a revolution a little bit more than 40 years ago, so there are contentions over exactly what it means to be Iranian, what it means to be excited about cheering on the Iranian national team. Even things as simple as a flag. I mean, of course, the Islamic Republic has a flag. It's the official flag of Iran, but I mean, you have people who want to wave the pre-revolutionary flag, the flag of the old Iranian monarchy. At a time like this when emotions are running very, very high, what does it actually mean to be Iranian and to come out and cheer on a national football team?
And on Friday, tensions between pro-government and anti-government fans boiled over during Iran's match against Wales, with female anti-government fans claiming harassment by pro-regime supporters. Notably on Friday, the Iranian team sang the country's national anthem, in contrast to their silence during their first World Cup fixture against England. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
The main news again. The man charged with killing 10 people in a racially motivated attack at a supermarket in Buffalo, New York, pleads guilty. Media companies involved in the Wiki cable leaks from 12 years ago call on the U.S. government to drop charges against Julian Assange. And U.S. stocks tumble as investors react to protests in China, as well as comments from Federal Reserve members. That is the latest feature story news. Ira Spitzer reporting.
This is the Onion Week in Review. In a landmark 5-4 decision issued this Wednesday, the Supreme Court ruled to allow Americans to cram cash directly into politicians' mouths. The ruling, which effectively eradicates former prohibitions against stuffing checks and stacks of $100 bills straight down the throats, ears, and other orifices of presidential and congressional candidates, is expected to fundamentally alter the ways American politicians have large quantities of money shoved right into their bodies.
In football music news this week, the 1985 Chicago Bears reunite to record their first new material since the Super Bowl Shuffle. The group says the new material will be darker and more introspective than its Shuffle-era work.
And in this week's op-ed pages, a man asks why, if God exists, doesn't he throw us like a really sweet party? In other news, an increasing number of men feel pressured to accept realistic standards of female beauty. FedEx confirms that more than 600,000 people try to mail themselves each year. And a recovering alcoholic doesn't need friends to have a good time.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. You can join the show here. The number 603-283-6160. Joining you tonight, it's Ian.
And Aria.
We are pretty big critics of big tech here on Free Talk Live. We love technology. We love the idea that, people can connect with one another in ways they never could 30 years ago.
It's a beautiful thing.
The internet and technology makes that possible. But what we've seen over the last 20 years is these big tech corporations, like Google and Apple, for instance, have become more and more powerful. In these spaces, you got Facebook as well coming in now with their shift over to Meta. And these companies have just been aggregating more control and more ability to tell people what they can and can't do on the internet, prohibiting them from seeing certain things, certain ideas. This is what we spent some of the first hour talking about here tonight with Twitter now going on the assault against Apple, with Elon Musk calling out Apple for telling Twitter that they were going to restrict their app, like take it off the App Store basically, but not explaining why. And so Elon just went off and said, oh yeah, by the way, there's a 30% tax basically that Apple charges. And I think Google's got the same thing, by the way, but on every single purchase done through the App Store. And apparently Apple doesn't like that very much when you talk about their business practices. According to the Wall Street Journal, in a story about this conflict between Twitter and Apple. And I'm skipping the part that's sort of like there's a few paragraphs as sort of a recap of Elon Musk taking over Twitter and you know all these firings and the things that have kind of happened over the last month, which we've covered in detail here.
It's been an interesting month for Twitter.
It has. And according to Musk, the numbers are up. Numbers of signups, numbers of usage is up. He criticized Apple not just recently, but previously when they faced a legal battle. And you may recall this story, Arya, when Epic Games came after Apple over the 30% fee. I don't know if you remember that story. Epic accused Apple of holding an improper monopoly over the distribution of third-party apps on iPhone and forcing those software companies to use its in-app payment system. Epic has called Apple's 30% take unfair. Now, while I agree it's unfair, I don't think calling them a monopoly is really accurate.
No, they have competitors. There is no App Store competitor for the Apple operating system, but these are all, it's all one piece of software the way they have it put together, right? You can't have a monopoly over the bundled store on the operating system because they're one and the same. They're inseparable at this point.
Yeah, so monopoly is not the right word, but people love to tech critics love to use the term monopoly to describe any big tech company they don't like, essentially.
Yeah.
And I'm with you on the I don't like fill in the blank. I don't like Microsoft. I don't like, Apple. I don't like Google.
Some are better than others, though.
Yes, slightly, right? Like Google's a little bit better in that they let you install your software that you want to. Their system is open source. You can do more with that particular system.
And it varies a lot as well. Like just because you can do this with, your Android phone, still, or you can do this or whatever, Microsoft has their advantages when it comes to Windows, but maybe the Xbox is far more locked down than a PC would be, or than a Nintendo Switch or whatever.
Of course. I mean, I'm not having used it, but I suspect that they are.
But both of them are from Microsoft, and drastically different philosophies behind their development and their openness.
So Epic Apple, of course, defended their business, saying their fees are in line with the industry norm. And
they set the industry norm.
Yeah.
They invented the App Store.
And fair for the technology it provides. It mostly won a lawsuit by Epic, though the two are continuing to fight in an appeals court. Musk waded into the matter more than a year ago, before his interest to own Twitter was clear. He said at the time, quote, Apple App Store fees are a de facto global tax on the internet. Epic is right, he said. Apple, and this is one of the really interesting points here, Apple keeps a close eye on what software makers say. And according to documents that emerged during the Epic trial, had warned app developers about taking their grievances public, aiming to settle disagreements in private.
That sounds like that may be illegal. I don't know, but that sounds like it's at least going to get into some gray areas.
Well, I don't think it's illegal for them to say, hey, don't talk about this. Let's cut a deal, right? Like, let's not go public. But it definitely shows that this is an organization that is very secretive. They do not want you to know how their business operates. And that's a turnoff for sure.
And they know what power they have by having control of the App Store. They know
totally
they can make you bend your knee.
Yeah, and that's what they're trying to do now with Twitter. And Elon Musk is acting as though he's not going to bend at the knee. So
kudos to him for that.
And if he goes to the mat with this, then that means that Twitter will no longer exist, at least as an app, on Apple's App Store. That does not mean you wouldn't be able to access Twitter, right? Because they have a mobile website.
Right? Unless Apple decides, you know what, the Safari browser shouldn't be able to access Twitter anymore.
Well, then they would also have to tell every other browser that's on their system to prohibit access to Twitter.com, right?
They might be willing to do it, too.
It depends on how petty they are, right? Like, how far are they willing to go with this?
If Apple says to them, hey, Google Chrome, block it, or we're kicking you off the Apple Store.
Right.
I don't know. Google might comply.
The question is, have they ever done this before? This is the thing. We don't know a lot about how they do business. We know they're very secretive about it. We know they've restricted other apps, or they've threatened restrictions. We know they threatened library. They said you have to ban COVID-related search terms, or we're not going to let you onto our app store. So have they already gone to Brave browser, or Opera, or Chrome, or these other Firefox, and said, you have to ban this list of websites from your browser. And normally the whole point of having a web browser is that there's no restriction, right? Like one of the reasons...
Especially an open source one like Firefox.
Right. One of the reasons why a lot of these people make web browsers is because they still have that vision of an open internet, right? Like we want people to be able to access not just Facebook and, some other centralized system. We want people to go anywhere they want to. It's a web browser. There should be no restrictions on it. So that's the question.
Theory,
would this be the first time that Apple would have demanded such a thing? Now, we're not there yet.
No, and I don't think Apple would be that petty. But
we'll see if we get to find out.
To tell the browser manufacturers you have to block access to this particular website.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That is crazy.
So that may be where Musk just goes with it, and he just says, you know what? Take the app out of the store. People that want Twitter. And people want these social platforms, right? They're addictive. So even when I was sort of trying to break my habit of using Facebook to some extent, I uninstalled their app. I uninstalled their app years prior to actually quitting Facebook finally. So I quit Facebook at the beginning of 2018, but I probably uninstalled their app in 2015 or something like that. And to me, that was like an initial step. But it didn't stop me from going to Facebook. Like, I still wanted to see what was on Facebook. I wanted to check whatever notifications there were. So I just went on my web browser, and that was sufficient. I didn't need their stupid app, which was like ballooning up to hundreds of megabytes in size. And of course, then they wanted you to install a separate app for messaging and a separate app for page this and that. So they ended up having like half a dozen apps, it seemed like.
It is intrusive, and it's much too large. You're absolutely right about that. I think that probably will be my next step, to uninstall the Facebook app, because I rarely use it now anyway.
Yeah, just go to the website if that's what you want.
I don't ever use it on my desktop or my laptop. I'm not going to sit there browsing looking for funny memes to steal and post. It would cut my Facebook usage immediately down to just zero. And I don't know if I just want to go from I don't know if I use it enough for it to matter anyway at this point. It's like I literally just go on there to post stupid stuff.
But my point is, people that are hooked on Twitter, they're going to keep going. If that app disappears from the App Store, first, number one, pre-installed apps usually are not uninstalled by Apple, so the existing Twitter apps would stay. They can't just like remotely delete them, I don't think.
No, but they could break them.
Well, eventually they're going to break over time. But people would just go to their web browser, and that's how Musk will keep the iPhone users on. So I think he's pretty safe. Unless they do indeed go after the browser. So we'll see how this all plays out. But there's other news about Apple because they are pretty evil over there.
They are.
I mean, it's bad to restrict your software. It's bad to restrict your users. But what's really bad is to work with communist murderers. And that is what they have been doing in China. We talked in detail yesterday about, well, as much detail as we can get because we're not there, but about the protests that have been erupting in the streets, like some of the biggest protests in decades in China, and Apple is helping the Chinese government. We'll tell you how.
Generic or name brand? I'm Holland Cook with Inflation Hacks. On a radio interview, I suggested comparing the ingredients in generic over-the-counter meds with name brand pills. And we got a call from a pharmacist who said that some generics might not work as well as name brand pills because of inactive ingredients you won't see listed on the packages. For seasonal hay fever, I myself came back to Sudafed after the store brand with the same active ingredient wasn't as effective. Dr. Roy Blackburn was listening, and he writes, the meds which are probably most important not to buy generically are cardiac meds and thyroid meds. Otherwise, it is worth a try to use generics. Thanks, Doc. How are you coping? Post your inflation hacks at andyoucanquoteme.com.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, Mark at freetalklive.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you're helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com. Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 15th through the 18th for the 7th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which sold out in 2022. For 2023, we're going back to where it all started, the weekend before PorcFest. ForkFest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 15th through the 18th. You can find out more at the unofficial website forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the ForkFest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the ForkFest forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there June 15th through the 18th. forkfest.party. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. The phones are open. If you want to join the show, the number is 603-283-6160. We got more news about evil Apple computer teaming up with the Chinese government. This isn't the first time, by the way, what we're going to get into here. But it's the most recent, and it's pretty awful. With you in the studio tonight, it's Ian.
And Aria.
Freedom's Phoenix is your source for all news, whether it be economic news, government overreach, insane government spending, or more. You can get today's headlines in one place and from a fresh libertarian perspective. And you can do that at freedomsphoenix.com. That's freedoms with an S, Phoenix.com. As we continue here, we're going to go to your phone calls. First, though, Sarah is on the line in New Mexico. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yes, so I kept you in suspense here. So I guess who was our real estate agent?
Whose real estate agent? Yours?
Yes, mine. Yeah. Who
are you buying a house? You're buying.
We bought a townhome.
Wow, moving on up, Sarah.
We bought a townhome.
By which you mean you and Richard, right?
Yeah, Richard, yeah.
Well, that's very nice. Now, how in the world would we guess from, 3,000 miles away who your real estate agent was?
Charles Manson.
I'm going to surprise you. So, he is actually the Al Unser III. He's the grandson of Al Unser, the motorcycle racing champion.
I've heard the name, but
I haven't, and I don't care. Sarah, why would we know this person?
If you were into motorcycles, you would know, apparently.
Well, I mean, the Al Unser, he's got a museum on Montano Street So I would like to go visit there, but he was very famous, and we even have a boulevard named Unser here.
And you said this was his great-grandson?
Not a great, no. He remembers him. He goes, Grandpa. He remembers
his grandson. Then, okay.
That is the Al Unser.
Well, so there you go.
I would be ashamed to have that be my leading foot. Like, hey, My grandfather was really
someone.
famous.
Yeah. Sarah, tell me about your townhouse, though. This is news to me that I heard a rumor that you'd gotten a townhouse. I guess you called about it maybe over the weekend on Sunday when I wasn't here. But, you were living you've had a real whirlwind last few years. You were homeless a few years ago. You were taken in by this generous gentleman who has been, he was in the trailer park, and now he's moved up to a townhouse. So, what's this like for you?
Well, I just have to give all thanks to God. I mean,
why? What did God do?
What did God do? I mean, He owns the whole universe. He decides who gets an increase in the income and who, gets what house. And so we got to even brag about our real estate agent. What are the odds of having an Al Unser, the grandson, closing out our house? I mean,
there is so much wrong in what you just said, Sarah.
Pick one of them.
I don't know how. God, okay, let's go with the easiest one. God doesn't set the wages or the income or the market prices. God doesn't do that.
Oh, that's crazy. God owns the whole
No,
earth,
what I said was not the
universe.
crazy thing, Sarah.
No, it's a matter of how you believe. I believe He owns everything and He controls who gets what.
So you don't believe in free will?
No, I mean, you do have free will.
But then God doesn't control everything and who gets what. If I have free will, then I can go out and earn something.
Well, the thing is, I have the free will. I'm going to give this trailer as a gift to one of my neighbors,
But it's not your trailer, it's God's trailer. It's not yours to give, Sarah.
Well, it's God's gift. If I give things away,
then let God give it away. Then let God give it away. It's not yours to give away, right?
Well, yeah, but He works through us. I mean, we're agents of the Lord.
Okay, but here's the thing, Sarah. See, I don't disagree with that sentiment. I believe as a pantheist that everyone is connected and that we are all part of God. We're all little pieces of God. So I think that God or the universe, love, if you will, works through people in that way. But I also believe in free will. And so I think that you can make choices and that you haven't had all your choices predetermined. So what you're saying is that you believe, you haven't said this specifically, but what I'm extrapolating from what you've said, that God makes all these decisions, it sounds like you're saying that people don't have free will and that it's actually God who's making all of the choices that you're not making them directly. You're not making those choices.
I mean, you could have free will.
No, you can't. This is a common problem with Christians and their belief in God's omnipotence. An all-powerful God is in control of everything and completely precludes the possibility of free will.
Is she a Christian, though? I think you jumped to a conclusion. Sarah, how would you describe your religion? I think actually she has told us before, but yeah. What religion are you, Sarah?
But all the Christian songs, we give thanks to the Lord that they say, give us our bread. The bread.
No, that's the government, Sarah. The government's been the ones giving you your daily bread. You're on welfare.
Yeah, but who owns the government? Who controls all the money? It belongs to
arguably
God.
the
devil. Definitely.
Well, I mean, that's your opinion. But,
well, I mean, it's the evidence because the government kills people, right? They murder people, and you take money from them. So you literally are taking blood money.
I mean, that's your opinion.
No, that's an actual fact, Sarah.
But I mean, it's true. They do murder people.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but the thing is, all good things come from the Lord. All of our provision.
All evil also comes from the Lord. That's Isaiah. You know that, right? For I, the Lord, your God, create good and create evil.
Right. How could God create just good? God has to create the opposite, right?
Well,
have you read the Bible before, Sarah?
Doesn't sound like it.
Mm-hmm. What?
Have you read the Bible before?
Yes, I have.
Okay. So you're aware. So you're aware that all evil comes from. You're aware that all evil comes from God, then, right?
Well, I don't know about the evil part. I think people choose. That's where.
Well, I'm just taking God at His word.
You
when I repeat
cannot both
that.
say, Sarah. You cannot say that free will exists and at the same time believe that God directs everything.
No, I'm just saying. I mean, the thing is that we got this gift because he decided to give us the provision, and we're thankful. But we were we were asking our desire our rant has been that we needed this house. So we've been seeking out to the Lord for something a lot better. So the thing is that your will.
So you were going out there putting in the work. You were looking around. You were finding a realtor. You were looking for a new place to live, right? You were doing these things?
Right, on our own, and plus
Yeah. What part of that did God do, Sarah? It sounds to me like you did this. Richard did this. You worked together to achieve this thing, and you should be celebrating that, not attributing it to some mystical entity that you've never met. Take some accomplishment here, Sarah.
Well, I think you can do both, but that's not what she's really expressing. I'm not hearing that from her. Like, you can put it out there to the universe, right? That you
Certainly.
are looking for a new opportunity, whether it be in business or whether it be in finding a great house or the right fit. But if you don't put the work in, then the universe ain't going to do jack diddly for you, right? Like, you have to have that intention, put that out there. Thank you, Sarah, for the call tonight. I appreciate hearing from you. But to just simply attribute everything to a force that is beyond you is not what's happening.
No, free will becomes meaningless at that point because you're not even an actor in the universe. You're just a pawn
puppet.
being moved on a board.
Yeah. There's more coming up here in moments. You can share your thoughts. The number is 603-283-6160. And more coming up about Apple working with the commies. Do you prefer to listen to Free Talk Live on your schedule on demand? You can find the link to our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com, which features the daily digest of our radio show 7 days a week. Just drop our RSS feed into your favorite podcast client or subscribe to us on the large platforms if you prefer, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartMedia, Spotify, and Stitcher. All the links are at feeds.freetalklive.com. If the daily digests aren't enough for you and you really don't want to miss a moment of Free Talk Live, you can always sign up for our AMPS Patreon at amps.freetalklive.com for just $5 a month, and you'll get the full radio show without recorded commercials. Plus, you'll help us advertise, market, promote, and support Free Talk Live. That's amps.freetalklive.com to join AMPS, or feeds.freetalklive.com to get our main podcast, or find us on the major podcast platforms.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. The U.S. Senate has passed a landmark bill protecting same-sex and interracial marriage across the country, and it did it with the support of both Democrats and Republicans. Until recently, gay and interracial marriages were thought to be rights set in stone, but the overturning of Roe v. Wade this past summer changed that. FSN's Tony Waterman has more.
The Respect for Marriage Act passed with bipartisan support, 61 to 36. Only Republicans voted against it. The legislation doesn't force states to legalize same-sex marriage, but rather requires them to recognize legal marriages from other states and offers protections at a federal level. In a concession to Republicans, religious organizations will not be required to partake in the celebrations. The legislation gained steam after the overturning of Roe v. Wade in June. In his opinion, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas questioned whether the court should revisit other liberal precedents, including gay marriage and access to contraception. The bill now moves back to the House for final approval before landing on the president's desk as soon as next week. Tony Waterman, Texas.
A U.S. jury has convicted the leader of the far-right Oath Keepers militia group of plotting to keep former President Donald Trump in power. Stuart Rhodes could face up to 20 years in prison for his role in the January 6th insurrection. Rhodes and another Oath Keepers member were found guilty of seditious conspiracy, an unusual charge that indicates an intent by two or more people to overthrow governmental authority by force. It's the most serious conviction so far, stemming from the January 6th riot at the U.S. Capitol last year, when Trump supporters stormed the building in an effort by some to disrupt the transfer of power to Joe Biden. Prosecutors say that while not actually entering the Capitol himself, Rhodes maintained contact with people who did and had positioned a group of heavily armed Oath Keeper members in nearby Virginia with orders to rush in to help the rioters if called upon. And disappointing economic data out Tuesday prompted the S&P and NASDAQ to fall for a third consecutive day. FSN's William Denzelo reports from New York.
Faced with rising interest rates, high inflation and the risk of recession, the Consumer Confidence Index for November hit a 4-month low. Data out Tuesday indicating a decline in house prices further soured sentiment on Wall Street. The Dow Jones closed the day essentially flat, but the S&P 500 fell 0.2% and the Nasdaq 0.6%. COVID concerns and protests over lockdowns in China have rattled the markets in recent days, as US investors assess how this will impact global markets and supply chains.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, and you can join the show here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Joining you in the studio tonight, it's Ian.
And Aria.
And, of course, you can join us online anytime you want. You can interact with some of the hosts of the show and listeners as well over on our social media site that we run. It is not some big tech mega tech corporation, no Facebook, no Twitter. It's much more free, where you can express yourself over at social.freetalklive.com, and we hope you enjoy it. So head on over there, social.freetalklive.com. It's a Mastodon-based system. That means it's open source. It is what do they call federated, meaning that it's connected with other Mastodons that are out there in the world, unless they want to disconnect from us, and some of them have, and that's their choice.
Well, free speech has consequences, as we all know.
Indeed. So check it out at social.freetalklive.com. As we continue here, we were talking about some of the big tech news, specifically that China has teamed up again with Apple. I mean, I don't think they've ever ended their team up here. It's just the latest news about it from reclaimthenet.org. Published yesterday. We talked yesterday about some of the news coming out about the major protests that have been happening in various Chinese cities. We learned last week that there's now 400 million people in various states of lockdown across China, all based on roughly 31 or 35,000 cases of COVID. Not deaths, but cases of COVID.
In a place with a population that numbers higher than 1 billion.
Right. They're saying, oh, my God, we can't have this. Zero COVID. We need to lock down. And
I mean, it hasn't worked. And
nope.
The Chinese government has to know that it won't work, right? That can't be their goal here. It's common sense that this won't work. And no amount, I mean, maybe they bought their own propaganda. Maybe they believe themselves to be truly all-powerful and capable of stopping a force of nature that is a disease. Maybe they believe it, but I doubt it.
Yeah, I saw another video today. Remember I told you yesterday there was an image online of them building these COVID quarantine camps on actual highways. So like the image was of a highway going off into the distance, and as it got like smoggy in the distance, you could not see them anymore, but they were just going for as far as the eye could literally see. And then there was another video I saw today of an ostensibly new construction quarantine camp, where these quarantine camp, they're these sort of rectangular structures, basically. They're cell blocks, open-air cell blocks, essentially. And these things went about as far as the eye could see. It was like a city outside of, I think it was Guangzhou, a city of these things. God knows how many human beings could be housed in this facility. It was incredible. It was on the Clown World account on Twitter.
Yeah, they've turned all of China into essentially a prison. They've done it successfully, and I know the people in China are afraid right now, and their government's coming after them. The police are rounding people up, and they're looking for participants and people who are willing to stand up against the government. But you're not going to get too many more chances to do this. If you want to do something that's going to lead to actual change, it's not time to sit back down and try to slink back into the shadows.
That's true.
I hate to say it.
It's scary. I mean, they are up against a behemoth of a monster. They were rolling in tanks within the last 24 to 48 hours.
I mean, they're at that part that, the crazy libertarians are always talking about, we arm up to fight against our government when they come to put us in boxcars. Well,
it's that time.
That's actually that
now.
time in China right now. I'm not saying take up arms. I'm just saying
people are peaceful, and I think that's obviously the best way to do it because I agree with you. Violence isn't the solution. But it is the time at which you have to do something, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to refuse to obey. And if enough people refuse to obey, they cannot force everyone into these camps. They got a lot of camps. There's no doubt about it. But if people don't get on the buses, if people don't do what they're told, if people don't lock themselves in their apartments, then there's very little that they can do besides, dropping a nuclear weapon on one of their own cities.
In which case, they've got nothing left to lead.
And they can't hide that one, right? Like they want to hide a lot of what they're doing. They don't want. That's why their mainstream media, which is state-owned in China, has not been reporting on the protests. They're trying to pretend as though those things aren't happening. But guess what? Everybody in every apartment building is looking down. The ones that aren't courageous enough to go outside, they're looking down and they're seeing what's happening, at least if it's in their area of the city.
I suspect with a lot of them, when they looked down and they saw the protests, they were inspired to join them. I don't know to what extent that happened, but certainly there were some people out there
the one we talked about in Shanghai was the lady that was reporting on it said it started with just a couple hundred and went to well over 1,000 while she was there. So
that's how these things go.
It was attracting people. Now, if you are going to one of these protests, and this can also apply outside of China, by the way, if Apple decides that they want to help the government, and they do like to help the government in a lot of cases.
Government's their best friend.
They are doing that in China, according to reclaimthenet.org in an article posted yesterday. Earlier this month, Apple restricted the use of AirDrop in China as a file-sharing tool for iOS that was used by protesters previously to communicate freely without the risk of censorship, or so they thought, because the tool uses direct connections between devices, creating a local network that cannot be monitored by government internet regulators. Now, this is a good idea.
That's a brilliant idea.
This technology is a smart thing, right? You don't have to go on the internet in order to share locally with people in the same room or in the same plaza as you, somewhere outdoor. I don't know what the distance is that this thing works at, presuming it's Bluetooth distance.
That's what I would guess.
You got a couple rooms worth of people that you can easily share to, and if the files are hopping from one person to another person to another person, they can propagate that way. Again, I don't know exactly how AirDrop works, but just presuming that that's how it is. And apparently what Apple decided to do was just shut it off entirely.
Probably at the behest of the Chinese government.
You better believe it.
I would be shocked if the Chinese government wasn't the ones who said, hey, turn this off. And Apple said, yes, sir.
Yep.
Yes, evil Chinese communist government. We will do what you say.
They did it right before the protests broke out. In fact, initially people could choose to receive AirDrops from anyone nearby. However, a recent iOS update has made that impossible. Apparently, this is affecting everyone. The update made a change to AirDrops usage. It is just China. So the update made a change to AirDrops usage that only applies in mainland China.
Oh, man. So they got a custom version of the Apple operating system. Musk is right. He doesn't want to have anything to do with this. This is blatant censorship.
This is terrifying.
Elon Musk, if you're truly a free speech absolutist, and I don't believe that you are, but if you are...
He won't let Alex Jones back on his platform.
No, but that aside, if he actually believes in free speech, he cannot allow Twitter to be on the Apple Store at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you're literally negotiating with terrorists.
Yes.
If Apple is doing the bidding of the state in general, but in this case China, one of the worst states of all the states, then they are essentially a tool of terrorists.
People will be tortured and killed in China by the Chinese government as a result of getting caught using less secure methods of communicating.
Yep, and we won't know about it because the videos that could be shared and could potentially escape from an area, like even if Apple... Or not Apple, if, presumably the Chinese government runs the cell phone providers there, right? So,
I'm sure they do.
The Chinese government turns off all the cell phone towers in the areas of where the protests are happening or restricts them to agents only, right? Because they wouldn't want to turn off their men's cell phone access.
It's scary to think they have that capability, but you're right. I had never thought about it. They absolutely would.
So this would be a way, this technology of being able to share files without having to rely on an internet connection is a way for videos of things that are happening to escape from the geographic areas where they happen, because everybody who has software that can do this, and now AirDrop cannot do this in China, but presumably there are other apps that maybe could.
I would hope so.
Would be a way to get videos
probably
out.
Not on Apple.
You get that video as far out of the protest area as you can till it finally reaches somebody who has internet access, and then they can use Telegram or something else, some other system. Because we learned Telegram is one of the ways that Apple's trying to block it, or China is trying to block Telegram. But that's one of the ways people have been getting videos out through VPN plus Telegram. There's more coming up here in moments. You can join us here. It's Free Talk Live.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Try Agorist Hosting, the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, custom apps for your Shopify store, IPFS integration, and more. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. To get started, head over to agoristhosting.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Excuse me, is this where I get a license to start a new business?
I wouldn't be hasty. You have to get a license to go out of business, too, you know.
Oh, well, look, I've invented this little anti-gravity machine, see?
Oh, is that why you're walking 2 inches above the floor?
Oh, yes, it's very comfortable. It saves on shoe leather.
Yeah, well, you have to fill out these forms and report to the Human Services Department of Manpower Orientation and register with the Fair Employment Practice Commission, the Wage and Hour Division of the Employment Standards Administration, the State Sales and Income Tax Division, the Internal Revenue Service, and the Social Security Administration of the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, and, of course, OSHA.
OSHA? I thought that was a little town in Wisconsin.
You'll find out. Say, floating around like that could be dangerous. Have you checked with the Consumer Product Safety Commission?
Well, not yet.
Come to think of it, you actually are flying, aren't you? Look, you need to go over to the Federal Aviation Administration and the Transportation...
It's very hard to get anything done these days if you're in business, but free enterprise built this country. Think what could happen if we don't keep it free. A public service of this station and the Center for the Defense of Free Enterprise, Bellevue, Washington.
We just can't have people floating about unregulated, you know.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
Live, and you can join the show here, bring up whatever you want to discuss. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. We're talking about activists being restricted by companies like Apple, who are teaming up directly with the Chinese government. They have updated an app of theirs called AirDrop, which is a cool-sounding idea, in theory, if you could use it.
I mean, what they did, they basically took the idea of the mesh network and they made it real. And that's phenomenal. You know, now that I've heard about this and I've really thought about the implications of it, because I went to a concert recently and they were shooting videos for a music video there. They wanted all the audience to participate, and then they said, just airdrop your videos over to us. And I was like, okay, that's a neat thing. I had heard about it before that point, but you can also just send messages or quick little videos or whatever, any sort of file, presumably. And that's everything you would want out of a mesh network.
Right, you wouldn't have to ask permission. One of the features of this app, which is called AirDrop, was, at least in China, it was, no longer is a feature, but it was that you could just send a thing to somebody who had their AirDrop open, right? Yep. Like you could just open it up and then
I think they would have to say, yes, I will accept this, but that was the end of it. You needed the permission of the person to whom you were sending it, but there was no third party.
Yeah, and now that has been restricted. So a recent iOS update. So in their they updated the whole operating system, and they restricted this feature from anyone in mainland China. The rest of the world, in theory, can still use this feature.
I mean, for now, until the American government or the German government or Russian government or whatever says, hey, Apple, we also want you to turn off airdrops in our country, or we're not going to let you do business here.
Now, it does say users in China can only receive from everyone nearby for only 10 minutes. So there's apparently still they're still allowing it to some level, but it's not like you can just turn it on, go to a protest, and just start receiving things. So it's highly restricted. AirDrop
I'd have to hear more about that restriction and how it works.
Yeah, AirDrop has been used by protesters in Hong Kong to communicate with other protesters and bystanders, as well as send messages to tourists from mainland China. On the mainland, protesters have used AirDrop to spread protest literature.
Ooh, that's clever, sending it to tourists.
According to Bloomberg, Apple will roll out the, quote, everyone for 10 minutes, unquote, feature globally next year. But it's not clear why the feature was first suddenly rolled out in China, especially during a time of such upheaval and the biggest protest China has seen in over 30 years.
Apple's behaving like a government here. Hey, here's this feature that works just fine, but we're going to gimp it and cut it in half and give you only 10 minutes of it, and that's our new feature.
Apple has helped Beijing to suppress public dissent multiple times. This, again, according to ReclaimTheNet.org, mostly by complying with Beijing's requests to remove apps used by protesters for information and communication. So they've done it before. This is not a new thing.
Can you imagine being that evil?
Yep.
And these people who work for Apple, the developers, the people who literally coded this, where AirDrop wouldn't work in China, the ones who deliberately removed it. You participated in an act of evil here, a grave act of evil.
Yeah.
People will die because of what you did. And people will continue to be oppressed. They won't have freedom because of what you did.
Yep, that's right.
I don't know how these people live with themselves. They think, oh, I'm just doing my job.
Stop it. You don't have to.
Go work for Elon Musk, who at the very least isn't the devil.
Apple, according to the story here, also helps the Chinese Communist Party prevent users from remaining private by banning VPNs in the region. We learned yesterday that it is illegal to have VPN software on your phone in China, and they've been demanding phones. Of course, the news media says they're asking people for phones. No. They don't ask. They're demanding that you hand over your phone so they can search it and see if you have VPN software on there. And Apple is doing them a favor by prohibiting VPN software from being able to be installed in China in the first place.
Yeah, it just won't be in their app store, right?
That's
if you're
right.
from China?
Yep.
Yeah. So you have to jailbreak what is the term? Jailbreak your phone, your Apple device,
Whatever
if you want to have a
means.
VPN on it. I think it basically just means to root it.
Yeah,
to
but what does
give
that
yourself
mean for...
super user permissions where you can install from third parties.
Can you? I don't know.
You can do it with almost every phone.
I don't want to jump to the conclusion that that is actually what jailbreaking allows you to do.
Okay.
Because I don't know.
I know what rooting allows in Android, and I would just assume that jailbreaking was the iPhone equivalent of that.
We should look that one up rather than assume on that. But that's the story, right? So that's the latest. Apple's latest assist to the Chinese government and their oppression of these protesters is that they are restricting people from being able to share files with one another with this app. Now, are there other apps that do something similar? As I understand it, there are. I don't know if this one exists for Apple, but I know that there's one called Briar. Now, Briar is intended for secure messaging. I don't know if that includes file transfer. It is.
Well, I don't think anything that includes the word secure messaging is going to be available in China.
Probably not. And I don't, like I said, I don't know if this even does file transfer. It may just simply be person-to-person text messaging. But again, it's that concept of using not the internet, but the other phone, more decentralized methods of communication. So using Bluetooth, using Wi-Fi, the near communication fields or whatever.
The permissionless ones.
Yes.
I mean, that's powerful technology because you have to use the internet, you have to send it up to a satellite and it bounces off cell towers and all this other stuff. Any of those can be cut off by the government if they want to.
And we've seen it happen in various countries.
Yeah, it's happened here in the United States where the government says, hey, we got to cut the internet here or to this house or to this neighborhood.
Well, to certain houses, yes, we've seen that happen.
It's just at what scale have governments been willing to do it? If they needed to, I'm absolutely convinced the United States government would just cut off the internet in New Hampshire. If they felt, the Al-Qaeda is building a terrorist cell there, and we have proof, and they're using the internet to communicate, and there's 5,000 of them in Concord right now, New Hampshire loses the internet.
Well, the thing is, they always want to have their own internet, right? So they probably would only try to cut off the average person from using it because they don't want to lose the tools of violence and the tools of evil that they've developed and corporations, have developed on their behalf, like facial recognition or Chainalysis or all these other, government tools that they have.
What I really like about the AirDrop thing, though, is it's like having a walkie-talkie, sort of, in that it's a direct way of communicating with anyone else who happens to have a compatible device. And you don't need permission. You don't have to go through a third party or anything like that. It's just direct communication. Except it's not just broadcasting it out there to the entire world where police officers can hear it and intercept it.
Well, in theory, a police officer could have this app, right? This AirDrop, right?
I don't know. I mean, in theory.
Yeah, I don't know how it all works. We've not used the app directly, so we don't know. We personally do not have experience with this. Maybe we can ask Bonnie if she's had any experience with this. And also want to ask you, if you're out there listening to this discussion and you are, a tech person, don't want to go off into the weeds or anything like that, but I would love to hear recommendations of what is an alternative to AirDrop that's not Apple product, but does something similar. I mean, this isn't like a crazy idea that no one else could do, right? Like this is something that anyone that can access a Bluetooth or a Wi-Fi transmitter on a phone could set up software like this. So there must be an Android equivalent to this, and I would hope that there's something else on the Apple system that isn't an Apple product per se, but it has gotten approval to be on the App Store that may be available to people that they can use instead of AirDrop.
Similar to how Google Chrome is also available on the Apple Store, even though they have Safari.
Right. Yeah, so what else is there out there in this area? It has been too long since we've looked at it. We do talk a lot about decentralized applications here. We've got our own Matrix server. We've got a Mastodon server. Now, they are centrally hosted, but they're not ultimately centralized in that they're not run by big tech. We're running them on our own server. We've talked about things like Manyverse, which is actually a truly decentralized social network, but we haven't tried that in like 3 years in the activist community here in the Keene area. And that would be something I would like to try again and kind of see how that's come along, because it was like in a real early alpha state when we first tried it, and it was not ready for prime time.
I don't remember the Manyverse.
It's interesting. It basically allows you to make a post on your phone, and then whenever it comes into contact, sort of like with Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, it comes into contact with other devices that have Manyverse. They share the individual's posts, as long as you're friends with the person or whatever. And so posts can propagate from one person to the next without actually having to rely on the internet. If the internet does exist, then it can just shoot it across the internet and it's right there. But without internet, it does still allow for social media to exist.
Very cool.
Just it would slowly propagate as one person goes and meets with other people, and then the post propagates. An interesting thing. And
but necessary. And I like how people are envisioning and developing these things here in the U.S. before they're actually needed.
All right, let's talk a little bit more about tech, because artificial intelligence is in the news again. We'll get into that coming up here with the latest. Hour number 3 is on the way. You can join us on Free Talk Live. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. The U.S. Senate has passed a landmark bill protecting same-sex and interracial marriage across the country, and it did it with the support of both Democrats and Republicans. Until recently, gay and interracial marriages were thought to be rights set in stone. But the overturning of Roe v. Wade this past summer changed that. FSN's Tony Waterman has more.
The Respect for Marriage Act passed with bipartisan support, 61 to 36. Only Republicans voted against it. The legislation doesn't force states to legalize same-sex marriage, but rather requires them to recognize legal marriages from other states and offers protections at a federal level. In a concession to Republicans, religious organizations will not be required to partake in the celebrations. The legislation gained steam after the overturning of Roe v. Wade in June. In his opinion, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas questioned whether the court should revisit other liberal precedents, including gay marriage and access to contraception. The bill now moves back to the House for final approval before landing on the president's desk as soon as next week. Tony Waterman, Texas.
A U.S. jury has convicted the leader of the far-right Oath Keepers militia group of plotting to keep former President Donald Trump in power. Stuart Rhodes could face up to 20 years in prison for his role in the January 6th insurrection. Rhodes and another Oath Keepers member were found guilty of seditious conspiracy, an unusual charge that indicates an intent by 2 or more people to overthrow governmental authority by force. It's the most serious conviction so far, stemming from the January 6th riot at the U.S. Capitol last year, when Trump supporters stormed the building in an effort by some to disrupt the transfer of power to Joe Biden. Prosecutors say that while not actually entering the Capitol himself, Rhodes maintained contact with people who did and had positioned a group of heavily armed Oath Keeper members in nearby Virginia, with orders to rush in to help the rioters if called upon. And disappointing economic data out Tuesday prompted the S&P and NASDAQ to fall for a third consecutive day. FSN's William Denzelo reports from New York.
Faced with rising interest rates, high inflation and the risk of recession, the Consumer Confidence Index for November hit a 4-month low. Data out Tuesday indicating a decline in house prices further soured sentiment on Wall Street. The Dow Jones closed the day essentially flat, but the S&P 500 fell 0.2% and the Nasdaq 0.6%. COVID concerns and protests over lockdowns in China have rattled the markets in recent days, as US investors assess how this will impact global markets and supply chains.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking in more depth today at the unprecedented demonstrations in China, some of them calling for the resignation of Xi Jinping. They're driven by public fury over the harshest COVID-19 lockdown regulations being maintained by any country anywhere, a zero-COVID policy that seeks to stamp the pandemic out and at all costs stop it from spreading through the population. But there's a reason the Chinese are so adamant about trying to control COVID-19. With no effective vaccine of their own and an ongoing refusal to buy Western jabs, the Chinese authorities are stuck, says Rana Mitter, Professor of Chinese Politics at Oxford University.
They've had Chinese-made vaccines which are not of fantastically high quality, so they're much more worried about the elderly. It isn't as straightforward as simply saying, well, you know what, tomorrow morning, fair enough, we change the policy and people can just run around and do what they want. I think in the short term, they would probably have to come up with some policy in which maybe older people are made to stay at home. The problem is that there's no easy way out because the wide vaccine-driven immunity or resistance that we have in the West simply doesn't exist in China.
It's a growing conundrum for the leadership in Beijing, and the public demonstrations seem to have been boosted by televised images from the World Cup, showing fans gathering without masks or mitigation, close-ups that Chinese state television is now pulling from its transmissions. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
The main news again. The U.S. Senate passes a landmark bill protecting same-sex and interracial marriage across the country with bipartisan support. A U.S. jury convicts the leader of the far-right Oath Keepers militia group of plotting to keep former President Donald Trump in power. And disappointing economic data prompts the S&P and NASDAQ to fall for a third consecutive day. That is the latest feature story news. Ira Spitzer reporting.
It's The Onion Radio News. A new crispy snack cracker will ease the crushing pain of modern life. The dull, all-consuming ache of present-day existence will be slightly alleviated when Nabisco's breakthrough TC McCrispies line of crackers arrives today. Available in regular, Garden Ranch, and Zesty Cheddar, the new crackers will flood consumers' bodies with fat, salt, and starch to produce a pleasing sensation of warmth and nourishment, momentarily freeing them from a relentless, crushing sense of profound grief. Mel Krychak is Nabisco's Director of Corporate Communications.
Our tasty new snack cracker will, if only for a few lovely moments, significantly lessen the hideously bleak and empty torment of modern life that festers in every solitary soul.
Nabisco expects most despair-riddled consumers to eat an entire box in one sitting. Doyle Redland for The Onion Radio News, online at theonion.com.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, kicking off the third hour of the show. Phones are open. You can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. We were talking about some technology out there, specifically a program created by Apple Computer that has been restricted ostensibly at the request of the Chinese government. I mean, Apple's not commenting publicly on this, but it's awfully suspicious that of all of the countries in the world, China is the one country that has a restriction on Apple's what's called the AirDrop software, which
was software that they used previously in protest to share videos and plans and messages.
Right. So now Apple has decided to implement a new quote-unquote feature only in China that restricts the unlimited use of AirDrop to a 10-minute restricted window. So it hasn't apparently been shut off entirely, but basically it's been crippled. I mean, they've
I'm sure it's just a coincidence. It has nothing to do with Chinese oppression. Certainly not.
Yeah, it has. It's definitely going to stop people from using this technology to share videos and things like that at these protests, which could help them get out, could help them reveal the truth of the tyranny these people are facing right now, by the way, with the Chinese government rolling in tanks over the last 24 to 48 hours into big cities. There's an update here from the Associated Press on the various protests we covered yesterday. So to give you the latest here, Chinese universities have sent students home, and police have fanned out in Beijing and Shanghai to prevent more protests today after crowds angered by severe antivirus restrictions called for leader Xi Jinping to resign in the biggest show of public dissent in decades. So, yes, so-called authorities have eased some controls after demonstrations in at least 8 mainland cities in Hong Kong, but maintained they would stick to a zero-COVID strategy that has confined millions of people to their homes for months at a time. Now, what I wish the AP would do is explain when they say authorities have eased some controls, what does that mean? What are the controls that have been eased? Are they no longer checking the phone apps? Because remember, all these Chinese people have an app that gives them permission whether or not they can go into stores and things like that.
I suspect that nothing has changed. This is probably just a report from the Chinese government, and it's
just propaganda.
Yeah, it's office that deals with foreign governments and foreign media. It's like, hey, look, yeah, you know, they were upset with how we handled things, so we loosened it a bit. You know, just like they asked to see people's phones.
Could be, but there are reporters that live in China who don't work for the Chinese government, that are on the ground. Like the woman that was reporting from the protest that we reported on yesterday. It was over the weekend. She was taking videos of what was going on and posting those. So, I mean, certainly the government can identify her and come after her, I'm sure, if they want to.
And I'm sure they will.
And maybe they will, but
I hope not.
The point is there are still ways for independent reports to escape from China.
There are. It's rare, but it does happen, and it takes courage.
Indeed. They say security forces, which is just another term for police. I don't know why the media is using these terms so much recently. But they've detained an unknown number of people and stepped up surveillance. With police out in force, there was no word of protest.
Didn't they just say they had loosened restrictions?
They mean COVID restrictions.
But how could they possibly do both things simultaneously, where you loosen restrictions, but you also detain people and send in police? That sounds like the opposite of loosening restrictions.
I can explain. I mean, they're loosening COVID restrictions. If that's true, they would simply allow for more people to leave their homes on more occasions or whatever those things are that have been restricted. But now there's more cops in the street, right? So it's COVID restrictions are looser, but protest restrictions are up. So they're fine if you're going to the grocery store or maybe going to work. But if you're going to have yourself a little protest, then that's going to be put down.
Even if it's true that they loosened COVID restrictions, and without even a single example, I'm not inclined to believe that's actually true.
Yeah.
The net freedom that was gained here is zero.
Of course.
I mean, it's actually gone down here.
No one claimed freedom increased.
No.
They just said some
But
restrictions.
I just want to remind people that, you know, they were protesting because they weren't free. They weren't protesting because of COVID or COVID restrictions. They were protesting because they weren't free.
Well, yeah, they weren't free regarding COVID. I mean, most people don't protest the existence of the police in their cities. That did happen in the United States for a short period of time in the summer of 2020. But for the most part, police are just sort of not, they're just accepted, right? They're just part of society.
How can these people in China who are dealing with this accept the police as one of them, as just a part of society? No, they are literally your oppressors. At least here in the United States, there is some degree of accountability. There is some sliver of humanity in most of the police officers that we end up dealing with. Most of them
in New Hampshire, maybe, but some places are pretty bad.
They all have bad cops, right?
Yeah.
But very rare is the cop who would just as soon put a bullet in the back of your head as help your grandmother off the street. But those are the cops that they have created there in China, where you're nothing to them.
Yep.
You're literally nothing to them. They don't care if you
they will murder your dog in front of you.
Yeah, they will disappear you. They don't care.
Police out in force. There's no word of protests today in Beijing, Shanghai, or other major mainland cities, at least if the AP is to be believed, that were the scene last weekend of the most widespread protests since the army crushed the 1989 student-led Tiananmen Square pro-democracy movement. So that's a pretty big statement to say that in 3 decades that what happened over the weekend in China against COVID was the biggest since Tiananmen Squares. It's a pretty big statement.
Well, China keeps the citizens locked down pretty tightly. And because of all of the control mechanisms, it usually has a pretty good warning when things are about to erupt.
In Hong Kong, about a dozen people, mostly from the mainland, protested at a university, Beijing's Tsinghua University, where students protested over the weekend, and other schools in the capital and southern province of Guangdong sent students home. The school said they were being protected from COVID-19, but dispersing them to far-flung hometowns also reduces the likelihood of more demonstrations. Chinese leaders...
Did anyone actually believe that they were being sent home to protect them from COVID-19?
I would hope not.
I would hope not too. But it's interesting, this correlation that China and other governments seem to keep having, where when you put people there to be educated, when you give them, when they have schooling, whether privately owned or publicly owned, that's immaterial. When you have education and people becoming more intelligent, more aware of the world, more educated, they go, we should have some amount of autonomy and control of our lives. And, they mistake that for democracy, obviously, but they go, we should have some freedom and democracy the more educated they get. Just interesting to note.
Yep, sending them home, though, instead. And the Chinese government so-called leaders are wary of universities, which have been hotbeds of activism, including the Tiananmen protests. On Sunday, Tsinghua students were told they could go home early for the semester. The school, which is Xi's alma mater, arranged buses to take them to the train station or the airport. Apparently, they were in a hurry. 9 student dorms at Tsinghua were closed Monday after some students tested positive for COVID-19. According to one who noted the closure would make it hard for crowds to gather. The student gave only his surname, Chen, for fear of retribution from authorities. And then it goes on to talk about other universities sending students home.
All suspiciously to protect them from COVID the very next day
after the protests.
After protests.
Police appear to be trying to keep the crackdown out of sight, possibly to avoid drawing attention to the scale of the protests or encouraging others. Videos and posts on Chinese social media were deleted by the ruling party's vast online censorship apparatus.
Well, we knew that was going to happen. That's what they do.
There were no announcements about detentions, though reporters saw protesters being taken away by police, and so-called authorities warned some detained protesters against demonstrating again. In Shanghai, police stopped pedestrians and checked their phones looking for apps such as Twitter, apparently also banned in China. They mentioned Telegram specifically last night as well, and also checking for VPNs and things like that. So I'm
surprised to hear that Twitter is banned in China. With all the leftists that had been working over at Twitter, I would have thought they had been happy to appease the communist government.
In Beijing, police Monday visited a resident who attended a protest the previous night, according to a friend who refused to be identified for fear of retaliation. He said the police questioned the resident and warned him not to go to more protests. So he didn't get black-bagged at this point. They are definitely trying to intimidate.
It's also interesting that people are not getting black-bagged. This isn't the first story I've heard of the police visiting someone saying, don't protest again. That suggests that there were too many people there for them to punish.
Or maybe they're worried about more protests coming out if word gets out that black baggings are going on. They're taking a soft hand approach to trying to stop this for now. More coming up here in moments. You can share your thoughts, 603-283-6160. Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world, so I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here, and I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
Gold and silver. You can own the most stable assets in recorded history with BullionMax.com. Buy direct from BullionMax.com without talking to a salesperson, and your precious metals shipped fully insured directly to your home. Free Talk Live can get you their silver starter kit at employee pricing. Just go to BullionMax.com/FTL. It includes 5 ounces of the most desirable silver products plus a free gold bag. This offer is limited to 1 per household, so get yours now. Go to BullionMax.com/FTL.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
I'm crazy about My Magic Mud. This is the most important oral care product created this millennium, and I'm not kidding. We all have different opinions on politics and issues, but we all have mouths. And I want yours to be as clean as possible, with teeth as bright as they were meant to be. I will never be without My Magic Mud. It's a little surprising, but man, does it work. If you only listen to one thing I say ever, go to mymagicmud.com and get 20% off with code FTL. mymagicmud.com, code FTL.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
Is Free Talk Live, and you can bring up anything you want. Right here, the number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Ian and Aria in the studio here tonight. We do have some news about the artificial intelligence phenomenon that we've been discussing over the last several months here on Free Talk Live. It kind of hit the big time over this summer, where artificial intelligence artwork really started to get popular.
And it made a lot of people really upset.
A lot of artists are really upset specifically about the existence of AI art.
It's kind of tragic. I mean, I kind of understand where they're coming from, having spent, their entire lives learning the skill and mastering the intricacies, and then here comes along this robot, and it can do everything they can do, and better and faster and easier, and that's got to suck.
It can definitely do it faster. Maybe in some circumstances can't do it better. Like, there's some mistakes that the AI art kind of makes.
And art is always going to be subjective.
Sometimes. Yeah, but for the most part, for what you get, for the amount of time that you put into it from AI art, it's amazing. Yeah, I mean, it'll blow your mind. It's absolutely incredible. I know that, Aria, you've experimented a little bit with Midjourney recently.
I have.
And I've seen some of the work, and I think it's pretty cool. Bruce Fenton recently has been getting into AI art. The the former New Hampshire activist, well, still a New Hampshire activist, but formerly ran for U.S. Senate here. Unfortunately, lost his Senate primary.
The creator of Ravencoin.
Right. He's more notable for creating cryptocurrency, Ravencoin, and he's also a free stater. He's been going crazy on AI art. It's a lot of fun. It's great for people like me who have no actual artistic talent. Like, I cannot, I'm like stick figure level, right? Like, I can't do art.
Sure.
But I can type a thing. I can type a sentence, and that's all you need. You don't even need a sentence in some cases. You can type one word or two words into these AI art generators, and it spits out something of beauty, basically.
See, but that's what I like. That's what I lack, though. Like the core idea of like what to type to enter into this thing. I feel like if I could come up with that, I could probably just draw some decent artwork. I could learn the skill to do it. But like my brain just doesn't work in that direction of visualizing things that may or may not be interesting.
I don't either necessarily, and I've kind of like my usage of Midjourney has dropped off over the months. Like when Bonnie and I signed up for it over the summer, we went pretty heavy into it. We had a bunch of things to throw into it, and then you just kind of ran out of steam basically. And every now and then though, something will pop in, or like, oh, I wonder what that would look like. So we still pay the monthly fee, even though we don't really use it that much, just because it's such a cool project, and I'm happy to support what they're doing, even though I'm not happy that it's censored. I still think the technology is neat, and they're one of the ones that is least objectionable in that they do actually allow you the copyright over the images that you create. Not that I care about copyright, but what I don't like is there's an organization called, and it's poorly named,
OpenAI, right?
OpenAI, that claims the copyright on everything their users generate. So that means you don't have the ability to, sell it or print it or share it or whatever, right? Like legally under the stupid copyright rules. So...
And that's absolutely insane. That's like saying that you don't have the right to copyright or sell or reproduce a document that you create using Microsoft Word because you only entered the text and it created the document itself, the page.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, but that's how they have theirs set up. So I like Midjourney of the censored systems. Midjourney is my favorite one so far.
Conan has been messing around with another one that is Stable Diffusion.
Stable Diffusion, and that's what I wanted to talk about tonight. I did a little bit of experimenting with Stable Diffusion just to test it, to see if it was indeed so-called not safe for work, right? So there's certain things that are prohibited from Midjourney. You can't make a picture of a naked person, right, on Midjourney. But
I wonder why not.
It's been censored. They don't
user
want people...
age limits, maybe. I mean, I think you only have to be 13 to be on Discord, so maybe that was it.
I don't know. It's just they don't want people going in that direction with it, right? Like there's other things.
Then it's cartoons and paintings and pictures. It
wouldn't even let me use. I think I tried like Joe Biden as Hitler, and it censored that because it had the word Hitler in it.
That's,
right? So
that's so lame.
So I have my critiques of it, but still we've been paying for their service because it's a new tech, and I think for the most part they're doing good work. But I was more excited about Stable Diffusion because Stable Diffusion is purportedly more open source. In their official release was restricted, but somebody managed to get access. I don't know how all this works, right? Like I don't know the inner engineerings of how this works. As I understand it, there's a certain input that they put into this AI. The input being like the entirety of the internet's artwork, right? Photos and paintings and whatever's on the internet. They basically ingest all that into the AI, and it is able to describe what it is somehow. How all that is, I don't know.
I don't know. It's curious how it works, and it reminds me of those scripts. I was never convinced whether or not they were real, but it was like, I forced an AI to watch, 1,000 hours of sitcoms, and then here's 2 pages of the sitcom that it tried to create or whatever. I was never convinced that it wasn't just some guy creatively doing that.
Sure.
But it's the same sort of thing where you expose it repeatedly to all this stuff and then say, all right, now you create one, which is essentially what humans do with each other anyway. Here's 1,000 books for you to read. Now you write a book.
Sure, everybody's influencing everybody else, no matter what happens. And that's where Stable Diffusion looked like it was at least promising, because somebody was able to release the sort of the guts of the system that did not have the restrictions attached to it. So if you were running it, if you were like using it on some website, it was probably restricted that somebody else set up.
But you could build your own, right?
If you built your own, then you were unrestricted, and you could make whatever you wanted. There was no error message if you type in whatever it is you typed in.
How complicated of a process was that?
Not hard. There
Okay.
was like a setup for dummies. Basically, somebody did a step-by-step for like Windows users. You could just go follow the steps. You have to download this file and then do this and that, and you're done within a matter of minutes. So it wasn't hard to do. Probably not something your grandma could do,
right?
But an experienced computer user could breeze through it. And so, Conan and I have both experimented with this, and I thought this is great. I'm so glad this is out there, because when these other restricted systems were posting about their stuff, I'm like, well, yeah, that looks impressive, but it's restricted. That's not cool. Even though I'm not interested per se in making not safe for work artwork, I think people should be free to do that, right? And so that's why I like the idea of Stable Diffusion. Until now. And here's the news. TheVerge.com reporting that Stable Diffusion has now made copying other artists and generating porn harder, and users are mad.
What do you mean copying of their other artists?
Well, this is the other change they've made. So,
but that's all art is copying
Yes.
other artists.
Yes, and so they've unfortunately, what some people have called nerfed the system. They've essentially crippled Stable Diffusion here with this new 2.0 release. And according
Just
to
don't upgrade to the new release then, right?
Well, yes, you can stick with the old release and keep making art from here until time immemorial. But there are improvements that are being made to these systems, right?
And it's not open source, so someone can just cut out these modifications, right? Or is it open source?
It is, I think, still open source, but they didn't train the model using the not safe for work stuff, from what I understand. We'll get into some of the details on this and why this is a bummer. Now, whether or not the community will somehow be able to make their own fork of this and take whatever the advancements are of 2.0, because there must be some other advancements besides, we just cut stuff out. So take those advancements and then somehow retrain the model. I mean, we may see a workaround to this, but as of right now, it's not good news for openness on the internet. It's Free Talk Live.
Do you ever say, I could care less, when you really mean the opposite? You mean to say, I couldn't care less. It's a common mistake. You are judged by how you speak, especially if you're looking for work, with so many more applicants than openings now. But even if you're not, avoiding common misstatements will help you make the most of the dozens of conversations and transactions that crowd your daily routine. So whatever you say, don't say whatever as a single word sentence. It's the most annoying expression in the American English language, according to a recent poll. And avoid cliches like the plague. Just kidding. But seriously, at the end of the day, you'll want to avoid this scenario, sounding like everyone else. For more tips, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. The U.S. Senate has passed a landmark bill protecting same-sex and interracial marriage across the country, and it did it with the support of both Democrats and Republicans. Until recently, gay and interracial marriages were thought to be rights set in stone, but the overturning of Roe v. Wade this past summer changed that. FSN's Tony Waterman has more.
The Respect for Marriage Act passed with bipartisan support, 61 to 36. Only Republicans voted against it. The legislation doesn't force states to legalize same-sex marriage, but rather requires them to recognize legal marriages from other states and offers protections at a federal level. In a concession to Republicans, religious organizations will not be required to partake in the celebrations. The legislation gained steam after the overturning of Roe v. Wade in June. In his opinion, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas questioned whether the court should revisit other liberal precedents, including gay marriage and access to contraception. The bill now moves back to the House for final approval before landing on the president's desk as soon as next week. Tony Waterman, Texas.
A U.S. jury has convicted the leader of the far-right Oath Keepers militia group of plotting to keep former President Donald Trump in power. Stuart Rhodes could face up to 20 years in prison for his role in the January 6th insurrection. Rhodes and another Oath Keepers member were found guilty of seditious conspiracy, an unusual charge that indicates an intent by 2 or more people to overthrow governmental authority by force. It's the most serious conviction so far, stemming from the January 6th riot at the U.S. Capitol last year, when Trump supporters stormed the building in an effort by some to disrupt the transfer of power to Joe Biden. Prosecutors say that while not actually entering the Capitol himself, Rhodes maintained contact with people who did and had positioned a group of heavily armed Oath Keeper members in nearby Virginia with orders to rush in to help the rioters if called upon. And disappointing economic data out Tuesday prompted the S&P and NASDAQ to fall for a third consecutive day. FSN's William Denzelo reports from New York.
Faced with rising interest rates, high inflation and the risk of recession, the Consumer Confidence Index for November hit a 4-month low. Data out Tuesday indicating a decline in house prices further soured sentiment on Wall Street. The Dow Jones closed the day essentially flat, but the S&P 500 fell 0.2% and the Nasdaq 0.6%. COVID concerns and protests over lockdowns in China have rattled the markets in recent days, as US investors assess how this will impact global markets and supply chains.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
Is Free Talk Live. You can join the show here, bring up whatever you want. We're talking about the situation with artificial intelligence generated art. I would say that I'm a big fan of AI art. Are you?
Absolutely.
Fan of it? Yeah.
I like anything that brings color and character to the world that we live in.
Yeah, it definitely gives people the opportunity to do something that many of them have never been able to do, which is create artwork without having to actually have years of training or experience at being an artistic talent, and without having to spend the hours and hours that it would take to generate the things that the artificial intelligence can literally generate in 60 seconds in many cases.
That's one of the most insane things about this. Just even some of the simpler stuff that the AI generates, it would take me hours to do something like not even as good.
Close. Yeah, you wouldn't even come close.
No.
Let's go to your phone calls and thoughts here. By the way, I do want to say thank you to Defy the Code. This is somebody who's a supporter of Free Talk Live. Defy the Code is one of our AMPs, and you can join AMPs, which stands for Advertise, Market, Promote, and Support, over at amps.freetalklive.com. That takes you right over to our Patreon. You can sign up with your debit card, credit card, your PayPal account. And Defy the Code is doing what we ask, which is just $5 a month. So thank you for that, Defy the Code. You can help us out as well at amps.freetalklive.com. And you get perks like access to the AMP-only podcast, which has the full radio show minus recorded commercials. It's amps.freetalklive.com. Let's go to the phones here. We got Wandering Hippie, who's on the line here calling from, I think, did you say you were in Rhode Island, Hippie?
I'm in Massachusetts on Cape Cod.
Massachusetts. Welcome, sir. Apparently you are a YouTuber and you have thoughts on AI artwork. Go ahead.
Yeah, I've probably made 2,000 pictures with the AI program. I'm absolutely obsessed with it, and I have dragged hundreds of people from YouTube into this program. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think I heard about you. I think Breaking the Flaw, who's one of the hosts on this show on Thursdays usually, he was telling me, I think he was on your channel or on your Discord server or something, and that you guys will generate these things together. Like you'll share your account with people, and then they can give you suggestions, and you kind of generate art for them. Is that what you've been doing?
Yes, sir. I'll do live streams for 5 or 6 hours, and people of my stream will just give me keywords, and I will put them in, and we'll generate.
Wow.
I'm also an auditor, so we do a lot of stuff.
Cool.
Messing around with pictures of police with different kinds of keywords. It's very very interesting.
Yeah, I did a few.
I can imagine that's fun.
I did a few cop-related images too that were pretty fun. So, what got you into it, Wandering Hippie?
Well, honestly, I was doing some research on OBS one night, and
That's the open broadcast system for streaming video. Go ahead.
And the video ended, and Midjourney came up as the next video, and I like art, so I'm like, oh, I'm gonna watch more on this. And funny, when I tried to join it, you come to their website. It's a blue screen with a bunch of code. I was like, oh, what the heck is this? It's a scam or something. And then I just finally went for it, and I don't even like Discord. So, but I said, I got to get in there and try this program. And like I say, I've probably generated 2,000 photos. I'm starting to post them on my YouTube channel to show people, because it's freaking amazing what this thing will do.
Well, Midjourney logs all of your artwork, and you have a profile at their website where people can go and they can view all the artwork that you have created.
Yeah, I haven't been able to figure out how to get the link to bring them. I know if you do ask in the actual Midjourney program and then type gallery, it'll bring up your gallery, but when you try to post the link that's there to somebody else, it doesn't work. I haven't quite figured that out yet, so...
Yeah, I don't know. I've not dug that deep into it. I know that Midjourney has a website, but I don't know if it's restricted to just the people who are paying clients. And if it sounds like you are a paying client, right? Like you've got a subscription.
Oh, yeah. My subscribers help me out in paying for it. I pay the $30 a month because, like I say, I once did 13 straight hours of just this art program.
It's addictive.
I'm absolutely obsessed with it.
Yeah, it is addictive.
Because it's an AI, and it's just hard to, you want it to make pictures that you're thinking of, but it's amazing what you'll come up with based on some random searches,
Yeah, it really is cool. What you can do when you do pay for this thing, and they have a package for as little as $10 a month. So I mean, if you really love artwork and you think this is a cool thing, they'll give you like a freebie, like 25 free generations to give you a little taste of what it's like.
Yeah, but you don't get fast processing at all.
No, I think you do. I think you do on the $10. It's just limited. There's only so many that you can get per month. And when you get up to the $30 a month level, then it's like you would have a tough time hitting the limits. And then when you hit the limits, then they slow down your processing, so you can still do it, it's just slower. But there's a website. If you go to midjourney.com and then you just log into it, it sort of uses your Discord account to authorize you to get into their website. And that's how it's easier to kind of see what other people are creating. You don't have to just sit in Discord chat rooms and watch as stuff scrolls by. So it's a lot more organized on their website, and it really is cool to go through there. You were saying, I don't know if it was on the air or off the air, Aria, that sometimes you're not as inspired, and I'm the same way. It's like I don't always have things in my head that I need to get out. But if I go and I look at some of the other things that are being created on the platform, that sometimes will inspire me, like, ooh, I like that. Maybe I'll take those words and then change them over here and change them in this way. Or maybe I'll just take those same words and run them again and see what it comes up with.
It's very often that will be the case with me as well.
Yeah,
or I will generate some basic prompt, and that will give me an idea, and I'll build off that, and I'll keep building off of it until I've got something that I'm like, okay, well, that was a fun little journey.
Wandering Hippie, have you tested any other art systems besides Midjourney?
I have not, because I just became so addicted to this program that I just didn't want to try anything else, honestly. I know I had heard about Elon Musk, and I briefly looked at that, and it was like a 2-month waiting, and they wanted a lot of info. Is it Elon Musk? I forget if it's one of those guys has a program that's coming out.
Okay, I haven't heard about that one. The other big one besides Midjourney is called DALL-E, and that was the one that had a big waiting list. They did finally open that one up, but I haven't gone over there because they claim copyright on everything generated, so it's like I'm not even going to waste my time with that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but that's one of the nice things about Midjourney is they actually let you have the images to do whatever you want with, as I understand it.
Well, yeah, because anyone can feed in those same prompts, and they would have your image. They would have the same right to the image that you would.
Yeah, so I think I really like it. I like the idea of stable diffusion. It's just, it takes a little more effort to get it up and running, and you have to have a powerful graphics card to really kind of make it worth doing if you want to do it yourself. But it is cool to be able to do it yourself for the ultimate kind of hobbyist. But as far as ease of use, Midjourney's got it down. I mean, it's super easy.
Have you used the version 4 yet, sir?
I've experimented with it a little bit, yeah, here and there.
one of the guys that is my co-host, he is absolutely amazing with that program. He just does stuff that just blow your mind. Like, and another thing you might want to look at is we found out through a bunch of different news channels that there's a program inside of Midjourney called Loeb.
Is this the woman that's been showing up?
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, I had her I'm on a live stream right now. I had her picture up when I started my live stream because we try to torment and get it to, like, I'll ask it questions like, why are you here, Loeb? Who are you, Loeb? And the things that it will do, bro, it put up pictures of 4 eyes one day when we asked it, where are you, Loeb?
It's creepy.
Like, it's insinuating that I'm watching or something. It just... That whole Loeb thing is quite weird. Please,
yeah, it's an interesting system, and
it's good creepypasta.
Thanks for sharing us on your stream. What's your username on YouTube for people that might want to go check out what you've done?
Wandering Hippie.
Check out Wandering Hippie, and is that your username on the Discord server as well, where you're generating the art?
It is.
All right, very good. Thanks, man. Appreciate the call tonight. Appreciate the input. A lot of people are having a lot of fun with this stuff, and like I said, there is a cost to it, but they'll let you run a few for free. I don't make money off of this system. Like I said, I got my critiques of Midjourney. I don't like that there are restrictions, but what we're going to get into coming up here is, and I wish we had more time to talk about, is why some of these restrictions exist. There's a whole story about that, and we'll talk about it coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live.
What is your goal? What do you want of this revolution that you speak of?
You got to stir things up enough for the people who will actually revolt in a big way.
And what will that result in?
Millions of people in the streets, and the military guys ain't going to like it.
So what is your goal? You don't really know, do you? You don't really know what you want besides chaos.
A bloody revolution in the streets is
You
the
want a
only
bloody
way.
revolution? This is why I don't want to associate with people like you. Thank you for the call. You're dangerous and crazy, in my opinion, if you're talking about bloody revolution. Violent revolution just results in more violence in the future because the people who were the most violent are the ones that rise to power in whatever new power structure is created after the revolution's all over and done with, after the blood has spilt. Whoopee-doo, you've changed out one gang of criminals for another gang of thugs.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
There are basically 2 types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
Hi, I'm Derek J. To me, an activist's calling is to actively work to advance a cause. The cause for which I work is personal freedom. I believe my life is best when I engage in voluntary interactions and self-government. I reject the idea that anyone else has a higher claim to my life or my body than I do. I see people who call themselves the government as a threat to my personal freedom. I realize you may feel differently, but my relationship with the people who call themselves the government is completely involuntary. If Starbucks used some of its money to drop bombs, I wouldn't shop there. So why would I support the American empire? The empire does not require my consent.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. That's victimlesscrimespree.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. Moments remain, enough time here if you want to join us. The number is 603-283-6160. 603-283-6160. Here in the studio tonight, it's Ian
and Aria.
You can join us online anytime you want. Just go to freetalklive.com. Enjoy the features there. They are completely free. You can subscribe to our podcast over at feeds.freetalklive.com. Links to our RSS feed and other related links are there. For instance, maybe you want to follow us on one of the usual podcasty platforms like iHeartMedia or Spotify or those other ones. So you can find those linked over at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com. We're going to go to the phones here to a listener in Daytona Beach to WNDB. Jimmy is on the line. Go ahead, Jimmy. You're on Free Talk Live.
Oh, hi. I hear you guys asking for donations, and you tell us to use a credit card. Now, it seems to me you're asking us to donate in those evil, filthy lucre United States funds.
Well, unfortunately, Jimmy, we're both on bail conditions right now. So both Aria and I are under very restricted bail conditions. We are not allowed to use cryptocurrency. Otherwise, we would absolutely take donations in cryptocurrency.
For sure.
But if we do take a donation in cryptocurrency right now, we'll go to prison.
So you're not okay. So you're going to sell out to the evil person and not stand on your values.
You know, Ian's going to trial in defense of, his usage and support for Bitcoin in like a week, right? You're aware of this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's called standing for your values, is when you go to trial and you don't take a plea deal. And not to say, not to impinge upon you, Aria, but that's definitely the maximum level of standing. If you just straight up violate bail conditions, then you just go to prison and you don't get to stand for your values because no one will get to hear what you have to say.
And you accomplish nothing by waiting for the trial from a jail cell.
Right. It's the same reason why I'm not smoking cannabis while I'm on bail conditions either. I'm a big supporter of ending the war on drugs, but I know that if I smoke cannabis while I'm on bail conditions, they are going to put me back in prison. So I'm going to obey those bail conditions while I'm out on bail so I can go to trial and actually prepare for trial. Have you ever been charged criminally with anything, Jimmy?
Don't make this about me. So you're going to sell out.
All right, goodbye.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything about what you're doing that is selling out.
The number is 603-283-6160. We continue here. Let's go to this caller. You're on Free Talk Live. All of a sudden, last segment, the entire phone lines blew up. You're on the air. Go ahead.
Hey, how's it going?
What's on your mind?
I actually wanted to talk a little bit about the election fraud that's going on in Maricopa County.
What's going on?
I know it's a little bit of a crazy subject, but I'm actually the president of the Free Americans from Election Fraud. It's a little organization that we have going out here in Arizona, and we've been fighting, these claims from the liberal left about, how this election was completely stolen, how the tabulation centers were down, and things like that. And I think the biggest problem that I have is, we went to the Board of Supervisors hearing yesterday, and
sounds awful.
We kept getting, I don't think it was awful. I thought it was beautiful. It was it was a true sight of, American patriots coming together to make sure that, we fought for democracy. And that's
but democracy sucks.
Well, but did you not see? They were stuffing votes in the fart boxes.
So stupid. So I guess that was like a crank call, apparently. Let's continue here. I bet this is another one. You're on the air. Free Talk Live. Go ahead.
Hi.
Yeah, it's another one.
I'd just like to talk about marriage, if you guys are okay with
Sure, there, bud. Go ahead.
When do you guys think that? Hold on, let me revise.
Here, while you think of what you have to say, I want to make another comment about the democracy thing, because we didn't get to explain ourselves why democracy sucks. Democracy is just two wolves and a sheep deciding on dinner. So honestly, I don't care whether it's the Republicans or the Democrats. They're all untrustworthy scum, and they all want to rule over your life. And it doesn't matter to me. They're all going to stuff the ballot box if they get the chance, because they want to stuff you with all their stupid rules and taxes.
I thought it was weird that we had a caller from the conservative side of things claiming that the Democrats were claiming election fraud. When for the last 3 years, all we've heard was that Trump had the election stolen from him. It's all fraudulent, guys.
Yeah, it's always a fraud. The whole system is a fraud. The only way that you can end election fraud is to end elections.
Absolutely.
Anyway, let's go back to this guy. Go ahead, dude.
Okay. What do you guys think the age of consent should be?
Well, I think the.
Do you want a number? I mean, is that what you want here?
Yeah.
It's not my call to make.
Yeah, I wouldn't put a number on it. I would say it's whatever individuals decide is right for them.
So, would you think that there should be like a standard, like if a 15-year-old's like having sex with a 25-year-old? Do you think that's okay?
I don't think it's my call to make.
It's none of my business.
So what you're saying is that your 1-year-old should have sex.
Nope.
Isn't
it amazing how these people go to these places? Like where? Like why would you even think about things like that?
That's a really good question, right? What sort of person has that question come to their mind? But also, how do you make the jump from 1-year-old or 15-year-old to 1-year-old?
That's what I'm saying. They start the conversation by talking about something that most people, I think, could honestly disagree about, right? Like where a teenager can decide.
I would say 15 to 25 is tasteful, and the 25-year-old has some serious explaining to do. Probably doesn't have any friends. Is probably a loser, and someone has probably failed that 15-year-old, and is like, hey, this person's not any good. This is why they're having to date someone 10 years younger than them. But should anyone go to prison over that? I would say no. But that's not a 1-year-old.
No, and it's like every time the conversation comes up, they always do this jump like you're talking about. It's like when we're talking about people who obviously can think for themselves, teenagers who can make decisions for themselves, they always jump right into, sick stuff, right? Like it just doesn't make sense to me. I don't know where these people come from, what they think about, what their sexual preferences are, and I don't want to find out. And a radio show is not an appropriate forum to get any more details. So thank you for the call tonight. I appreciate it. By the way, the other guy who did the fart noise is back on hold here. So let's go to the third caller. Jack is on the line in Washington State. You're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead.
Give me 1 second, please. That was a joke. It's Jack.
Funny, Jack. Go ahead.
So, if you guys were able to tell the future, I'm going to get off after one question. Where do you think Twitter is in 5 years? I was going to say 10, 5, from RENU.
5 years? I bet you they're still not making money.
Is it going to be any different? Is it going to be this form of freeness that he says?
I don't know that I can predict what a single thing would be like a year from now, much less 5 years from now, especially something that's currently undergoing as many changes as Twitter. I'm not trying to, cop out from the question, but I'm not sure I could make any sort of rational prediction about what Twitter's going to look like a year from now or even a month from now.
That's
it's not going to be different a month.
Yes, I said yes.
Yeah, it's not going to be different from a month from now. That really significantly different.
A month ago, they had 3 times as many employees.
Yeah, but Twitter, it's okay. Are you talking about the company or the website?
The website.
Okay, yeah. I mean, the website looks the same as it always did.
Yeah, it hasn't changed in years.
Yeah, I don't expect you're going to see any crazy new things, but I mean, who knows? Maybe Musk does have some sort of a plan for this. He has mentioned what he calls the Everything app. He owns this domain name x.com, and he wants to make x.com the Everything app. Whatever that means, I don't know. He has already hinted that he wants Twitter to be a payments app. So he does want to go in the direction of making it so you can pay people over Twitter, which isn't some sort of crazy new idea.
No, but cryptocurrency already exists, so we don't need that from Twitter.
Sure, crypto exists. Musk is supposedly a crypto user, like he advocates for Dogecoin or whatever, so maybe we're going to see Dogecoin payments coming to Twitter. I don't know. That'd be kind of cool.
I would take it.
Yeah. So who knows where that's going, but thank you, Jack, for the call tonight. I definitely appreciate hearing from you. I want to come back to this AI artwork story when we get the chance. We're not going to have the chance tonight. But the short version here is that Stable Diffusion 2.0, they have crippled, they've prohibited NSFW, not safe for work content, and more outrageously, they have restricted modern artists have been restricted on the platform, meaning that what you could do previously was you could type in an artist's name. You could say, I want to see a mountain in the style of this artist, or
someone
whatever.
living,
right? Yeah, a living artist. You can do it with past artists too, obviously.
Right.
I want to see a party scene in the style of this artist, and it would cough that up. And apparently now they've restricted living artists on the Stable Diffusion system somehow. I don't know how they did it. I don't know if they just excluded their works from the data set. It sounds like probably what they did. So there's a real problem with Stable Diffusion 2.0. Shame on them for going that direction. But the internet isn't over. This thing isn't done. We'll see you tomorrow night.
Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Try Agorist Hosting, the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, custom apps for your Shopify store, IPFS integration, and more. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. To get started, head over to agoristhosting.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are